Chapter 847. Moment Between Life and Death 3. Su Luo couldn't help but look at Luo Haochen. Under the forceful pressure the Diamond Ape King was exerting as it got closer step by step, Luo Haochen and Luo Die, the two siblings, retreated step by step. In front of the enormous Diamond Ape King, those two siblings were simply like ants, so insignificant as to be negligible and disregarded. Suddenly, the Diamond Ape King extended its heavy, huge, palm leaf and fan-like hands, and slapped towards the two siblings. This palm was like 1,050 kilograms of thunder, as if it contained an endless amount of strength. Under this palm strike, would the two siblings die just like this? Su Luo's eyes squinted slightly. Suddenly, her heart had a sympathetic feeling for a person in similar distress. Just at this tense moment, suddenly a face appeared in the sky, a face that was around 60 years old, with features that somewhat resembled Luo Haochen. This face seemed to be gentle, but it gave people a feeling of strong deterrence. Ever since seeing that face, Su Luo felt her soul shuddering, as if she couldn't help but to kneel down and worship it. Just like the first time when she saw beautiful teacher, that kind of feeling. Su Luo secretly guessed in her heart, this person's cultivation state ought to be on par with beautiful teacher, right? That face suddenly appeared, but was still unable to stop the crazed Diamond Ape King. That palm ultimately still slapped down. However, that face suddenly became furious. Diamond Ape, you dare! Before his voice could fade, his figure suddenly appeared. Wearing a light gray robe, an elderly man with an icy, arrogant expression appeared in front of everyone. One could only see his pair of hands form seals and shoot towards the Diamond Ape King. He had saved the siblings from this dangerous situation. Grandfather! Luo Die cried out, having been pleasantly surprised. Oh heavens! Grandfather had come. Grandfather had personally come. Luo Die was so emotionally moved that she nearly shrieked. Luo Haochen gave a sigh from finally being relieved of a burden. Grandfather was here, then their little lives were saved. This is the Luo family's esteemed elder, Luo Xingtian. Ziyin muttered in a low voice by Su Luo's ear. He is worthy of being called the great shield of the Luo family. Luo Haochen definitely had a cry for help stone. In a life and death situation, he summoned his grandfather. Elder Luo's gaze swept Luo Haochen and Luo Die a glance. Soon after, his ice-cold gaze swept Su Luo and Ziyin a glance. His eyebrows slightly wrinkled. However, at this moment, the Diamond Ape King had already started to launch an attack at Elder Luo. As a result, he did not have the time to ask and take notice of anything else. The Diamond Ape King also knew that if he did not kill this damned old man today, then it would be the one that died. At this moment, Elder Luo and the Diamond Ape King had already begun to battle. The two exceptional experts fighting simply split the heavens and earth apart, making the earth quake and mountains shake. Rumbling sounds echoed in the surroundings, full of a desperate and harsh air. The two exceptional experts exchanging blows was similar to a real, windy thunderous storm, resonating through heaven and earth. The palm chopped towards the mountain top, like being crushed by the blue dome of heaven. It also appeared to surge up violently like a tsunami. For a moment, rubble swirled in the air, yellow earth filling the whole sky. Their line of sight became fuzzy. They could only see in the distant horizon, two black dots intertwining and fighting as they passed. They only knew that their might was so strong as to be incomparable. The rest they were unable to understand from watching. Su Luo and the others, in front of these exceptional experts, were simply too weak. This was simply not a battle that they could participate in right now. These several people, one after another, tried finding a place for cover, in order to avoid being dragged into this disaster. Just at this moment, the little divine dragon suddenly jumped out from Su Luo's arms. His tiny body leapt forward like lightning. Su Luo's expression immediately changed slightly. She lifted her hands, but was unable to catch the little divine dragon. As a result, she whispered, "Little foolish dragon, come back." However, this time, the little divine dragon only glanced back briefly at Su Luo. He only gritted his teeth and dashed forward. Chapter 848. Moment Between Life and Death 4. Because there was something that was attracting him up front. And the place he wanted to go was actually the place where the two experts were fighting the most intensely. This was truly wanting treasures and not wanting life. Oh. Su Luo's eyes stared intensely at the little divine dragon. Her brows were knitted very tightly. What treasure is more important than your life? If this goes on, you will lose your little life. When the little divine dragon had glanced back just now, he transmitted to Su Luo that he needed to go grab some treasure. However, in Su Luo's heart, compared to her worry for the little divine dragon's safety, all treasures must stand aside. Su Luo was extremely worried. Because outside, the mountain edge had collapsed, all kinds of substances and dust filled the sky. All kinds of rubble swirled in the air. The little divine dragon's hard pelt was still good, but Su Luo's defense would easily be broken. Just at this moment Elder Luo sent a heavy fist smashing towards the Diamond Ape King. The violent surging strength was unblockable. Bang, a heavy noise sounded. The Diamond Ape King had been hit squarely by the fist, and its huge, iron tower-like body suddenly fell backwards and was launched out. Bang bang bang. The Diamond Ape King's back hit the smooth wall of a mountain. However, didn't know what the Diamond Ape King had touched. Momentarily, a transparent layer of protective barrier appeared on that smooth wall. At this moment, a complicated pattern of a seal appeared on the mountain's wall. Now this protective barrier with a force like a tsunami started to vibrate. Rays of light flashed that was exceptionally dazzling, so beautiful as to make it hard to open their eyes. This incomparably powerful pressure, in an instant, exploded forth. All of a sudden, the Diamond Ape King's body that had knocked against it seemed to have enraged the mountain wall. It was blasted to pieces by the wall. Fresh blood was like a flowery rain, swirling in the air. It dyed more than half of the mountain wall red. Seeing the Diamond Ape King's devastation, Su Luo and the others sucked in a cold breath of air. That mountain wall. In the end, what kind of heavenly and earthly secrets did it have? Unexpectedly, to have such a terrifying side? However, Elder Luo's eyes suddenly shone. Just at this moment, suddenly, lightning struck down from the clear sky. Rumbling sounds echoed and shook people's hearts, making them uneasy. An inscription slowly appeared on the wall of that mountain. A complicated paragraph appeared in front of everyone. Su Luo and the others were simply gaping dumbfoundedly at it. No one would have imagined that when the Diamond Ape King hit the wall, after its body disintegrated and dyed half of the mountain wall scarlet red, that such a fantastic scene would unexpectedly appear. What is written on it? Su Luo stared at those words. Even though she knew every brush stroke, but linked together, she completely could not understand its meaning. After Xi Ning died, he was buried here. Ziyan stared at those words, and sucked in a deep breath of air. Her voice had a trace of trembling. Xi Ning. Legend has it that he was one of the guardians of the secluded necropolis of the gods. It is said that his grave concealed a map of the secluded necropolis of the gods. Even the calm and collected Ziyan was now speaking with her lips trembling slightly. Map of the secluded necropolis of the gods? Su Luo's heart was slightly startled. However, her face remained unperturbed without a single ripple. She already had 2 pieces of the map of the secluded necropolis of the gods. Could it be that another piece would appear here? Ziyan, with a shaking voice, slowly narrated. The continents have 10 great powers. Through countless years, they have been trying to find the map of the secluded necropolis of the gods. It's a pity that up until now, they hadn't even found a single piece of the map. Su Luo silently turned her face away. Of course they couldn't find it, because she already had a few pieces of the map fragments in her hand. Ziyan again said. Purgatory City openly listed the price, willing to use 10 pieces of purple-colored crystal stones to exchange for a fragment piece of the map to the secluded necropolis of the gods. Unfortunately, several tens of years, there was not a single movement. 10 purple-colored crystal stones for 1 fragment piece of the map to the secluded necropolis of the gods? Having heard what was said, Su Luo was inevitably speechless. So expensive. Unfortunately for Su Manor, at that time, it was easy for her to steal it from them. Chapter 849. Moment Between Life and Death 5. Didn't expect at that time, in Su Manor's treasure storage pavilion. In passing, She had grabbed a map that would give her a worth of 10 purple-colored crystal stones. Wasn't the advantage she took too great? However, Su Luo was very curious. Why didn't Su Manor go exchange it for the 10 purple-colored crystal stones? Su Zian, holding it, he couldn't even use it. How is it that I have never heard of this exchange for 10 purple-colored crystal stones? Su Luo muttered to herself. Zian couldn't help but laugh. This news was spread among the strong experts. How could you have possibly heard of it? So it was like this. Su Luo secretly exclaimed in her heart. So it was because Su Manor's position was too low. They simply hadn't heard of such news. Even Su Zian might not have known that it was a fragment of the secluded necropolis of the gods' map. Otherwise, according to Su Zian's standards, he would even be endlessly excited over a green-colored crystal stone. How could he possibly not exploit such a good opportunity? Even if he had no use for a purple-colored crystal stone, the 10 purple-colored crystal stones could be exchanged for 10 top-notch experts. Then Su Manor would have directly sprang up. Fortunately, Su Zian wasn't aware of this path, thus giving her this advantage. After having reasoned it through, Su Luo secretly rejoiced and was pleased with herself. While the two were talking, Elder Luo's body that was like an immortal to the bone, unhurriedly landed. Grandfather! Luo Die excitedly threw herself over to him. In her eyes was the desire to cry. Elder Luo merely glanced at her faintly, his brows knotted slightly. I ordered you to properly cultivate. All you know is to play all the time. Now you know to be afraid? Yes, 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 grandfather is the best. If it weren't for grandfather appearing just in time, we would have already died here. Luo Die covered her chest, having lingering fear. Elder Luo nodded, his indifferent gaze sweeping by Su Luo and Ziyan. His eyes didn't have a trace of a ripple, as if looking at two insignificant ants. Just at this moment, the little divine dragon rushed back. Like an arrow, he flew toward Su Luo. The little divine dragon's original speed was very quick, but now he was a lot slower. The first glimpse Su Luo caught of the little divine dragon, she had to do her utmost to restrain from giving voice to laughing in spite of herself. At this moment, the little divine dragon was carrying on his back, slung over his shoulder, holding in his mouth. In any case, any place that could carry things were all weighed down heavily. Heavens! When Luo Die saw the little divine dragon, she let out a burst of alarmed shouts. Isn't this a triangle prism? What kind of bow is that? Also, is that dropping cloth grass? Luo Die's eyes had almost gone cross-eyed from looking. Dropping cloth grass was very similar to her name. She must obtain it. Every one of those things were priceless treasures. How could the little dragon just wantonly carry them back? The little divine dragon, carrying these stuff, and wanted to run into Su Luo's embrace. However, just when he was only 3 meters distance from Su Luo, Luo Haochen's body dodged and blocked in front of the little divine dragon. Stop. Leave behind the treasures. Luo Haochen didn't think the little divine dragon was worthy. He directly extended his hand to lift him by the nape. The little divine dragon's temper was usually docile, as long as you don't piss him off. Able to piss him off, it was often 2 circumstances. The first was his treasures, the second was his little master. Now Luo Haochen wanted to block his path and coveted his treasure, and also separated him from his little master. As a result, the little divine dragon was angered. In the course of running, his pair of legs was very strong. One could only see him bounce up, and 2 sharp claws suddenly sliced towards Luo Haochen's neck. The little divine dragon's strength was originally already out of the ordinary. In a rage, his strength was even more something that Luo Haochen couldn't be compared to. His pair of sharp claws glittered like frost and snow. Just when it was about to scratch Luo Haochen, the little divine dragon's body floated in the air, motionless. It was as if someone had hit his acupuncture points and stopped him. Chapter 850. Convergence of Experts 1. Domain. A cold light shot forth from Su Luo's eyes. She then unconsciously cast her gaze towards Luo Xingtian. Elder Luo made his move. The corner of Su Luo's mouth raised into an indifferent sneer. What Ziyan said was not wrong. The Luo family was truly famous under the heavens for covering up errors. They would even interfere with the disputes among the younger generation. Su Luo welcomed Elder Luo's gaze with a cold voice. She said, "Senior, what is your intention?" Elder Luo's eyes swept by Su Luo with a total lack of regard. His eyes had no ripple, nor did it swell. Clearly, he completely did not attach any importance to Su Luo. However, it was true. In the eyes of such an expert at the top, a small fifth rank was truly not significant to look at. Luo Jie proudly sneered. "This is our Luo family's stuff, little thief. You dare to steal it? Delusional." A faint anger started to well up in Su Luo's heart. "These treasures were found by my family's spirit pet in these mountains. How could it be your Luo family's? Could it be that this entire area of the dark forest belongs to your Luo family?" Luo Jie relied on their own family's elder being here. In this space between heaven and earth, he held supremacy. As a result, her words didn't even contain a bit of politeness. "If it was not for my grandfather lending a hand, how could your spirit pet have found the treasures? If it were not for our spirit pinball, you guys would have died earlier. Then, how would you guys still be standing here?" Luo Jie arrogantly cast sidelong glances at the Su Luo pair. Ziyan's expression was unexpected. "If it was not for you guys waking up the Diamond Ape King, how could such a situation have occurred? We haven't even sought you guys to calculate this account. Yet you are arrogantly resting on your laurels." Hearing what was said, Luo Jie's complexion blushed deep red. After that, she flew into a rage from humiliation and flusteredly pointed at Ziyan. "What? Not repaying the favor of being saved and still want to question this kindness? Your purgatory city is truly too arrogant." During the time when the younger generations were quarreling, Elder Luo stood with his hands folded behind his back. His eyes gazed fixedly at that glossy, jade-like wall. His sleeves fluttered about in a posture of an immortal to his bones. Hearing Purgatory City, these two words, from the corner of his eyes, he faintly swept Ziyan a glance. With regards to such a strong expert's point of view, able to even look at the younger generation like this, was already rare. Ziyan merely continued to smile coldly. "Luo Jie, in the end, who is being the arrogant one? Fine, you continue to be arrogant. Let's see how the injury on your face will be healed." Ziyan knew that Su Luo had the rebirth of flesh pills on her body. A similar kind of antidote refined from primeval pill recipes was always from one family, with no other branch stores. Luo Jie still dared to be so arrogant, then let her face wait till it's destroyed. However, Luo Jie completely did not know that her appearance was already in the control of other people's hand. She continued to be despotic and insufferably arrogant. She sneered a few times. "The injury on my face, why should it concern you? Big brother naturally will help me get the rebirth of flesh pills. Even if brother could not get it, then grandfather would help her ask for it." Su Luo smiled coldly and cast her a glance. "My senior brother has already vowed to never refine another rebirth of flesh pill. Miss Luo, it would be best if you do not have too much hope for it." Su Luo knew that if she didn't reveal her identity, then the little divine dragon would suffer some grievances. However, the Luo family might merely treat her as a weed and would not believe her. Sure enough, once Su Luo said these words, Luo Haochen only sneered a few times. Luo family belonged to the influential families of apothecaries, so they were well versed in news about refining medicinal recipes. The matter of Lung Yen refining the rebirth of flesh pills, the Luo family was already very clear about it. Moreover, they had sent a core disciple in the family's younger generation to negotiate with Lung Yen, in an attempt to exchange for the primeval pill recipes. But unexpectedly, Lung Yen directly refused. He said that he would not exchange it even if you killed him. This made the Luo family's core disciple so mad that he flung his sleeves and directly left. Luo Jie only knew that the rebirth of flesh pills came from Apothecary Lung. However, she did not know about Apothecary Lung and Su Luo's relationship. Chapter 851. Convergence of Experts 2. Now her pair of eyes provocatively sneered, sizing up Su Luo from top to bottom. Tisk Tiske. Apothecary Lung is Grandmaster Rong Yun's first disciple. And you call him senior brother? Could it be you think you're that Su Luo, with such good luck as to defy nature? Su Luo spread out both hands, shrugging her shoulders helplessly. Quite unfortunately, that is precisely who I am. Who knew that the moment Su Luo admitted this, it made Luo Jie burst into loud laughter. You're Su Luo? Grandmaster Rongyun's personal disciple? What kind of joke are you playing at? Luo Jie decided to regard this as unbelievable. Luo Haochen also sneered repeatedly. You think that by pretending to be Grandmaster Rongyun's disciple, that you won't need to hand over these treasures anymore? How ridiculous. Luo Haochen and Luo Jie thought Su Luo was a fake. However, Ziyan used a complicated gaze to look at Su Luo. Elder Luo predecessor, could it be that even you think these treasures should be taken away by the Luo family? Su Luo serenely gazed at Elder Luo. Her expression was neither servile nor overbearing. She was natural and unrestrained. Although she seemed serene, but how could Elder Luo not hear the question in her words? His eyes swept past, and his gaze fell onto the little divine dragon's body. The thing on the little dragon's body was indeed very useful for Luo family's younger generation. When Elder Luo's line of sight fell on Su Luo's face again, Su Luo suddenly felt her body stiffen. The distinctive might and pressure that only belonged to a strong expert. It was just like an imposing and majestic towering mountain peak, pressing down on Su Luo's shoulders. Luo Xingtian. Su Luo's eyes stared slightly, laboriously biting her lower lip. She condensed her entire body's spirit power on her shoulders. Only with this could she breathe somewhat. However, this kind of feeling was really horrible. It reminded Su Luo of that time in Su Manor, when she first saw Li Yaoxiang. At that time, Jade Lake Palace's second master. It was also the first time meeting him, and he gave her an initial show of strength. That time, Nangong appeared in time and saved her from that calamity. But this time, she could only depend on herself. Su Luo's hand that was at her side suddenly clenched tightly. Just when Su Luo felt she was still able to resist the pressure with difficulty, this powerful mighty pressure once again got stronger in an instant. If it was said that the previous one was at 6th rank and tolerable, now it had already gotten heavier to the high pressure of a 7th rank. That was like the strength of mountain peaks smashing down heavily, causing Su Luo's knees to bend slightly. This was to make her kneel down, to admit defeat and apologize? Su Luo sneered in her heart. If standing on the side of justice meant having to be forced to apologize, then what she would be throwing away was not just her own pride, but also beautiful teacher's pride. She was pressured until she was shuddering from head to toe, sweat as big as beans rolling down. Su Luo's white as snow skin. At this moment, it was possible to clearly see every vein. Even blood vessels as fine as hair were clearly visible. On Su Luo's fair as jade skin, threads of blood seeped out. It was a ghastly sight to see. Elder Luo only targeted Su Luo alone, so among the several people present, only Su Luo had to endure this kind of unprecedented pressure. Seeing Su Luo being pressured until such a miserable appearance, Ziyan's heart was extremely anxious. If it continued on like this, Su Luo would finally explode. When that time came, how would she explain it? With a cold voice, Ziyan said to Elder Luo. Elder Luo predecessor, if Su Luo's master were to treat Luo Haochen and Luo Jie this way, what would you do? PFFTTT, the loathsome girl's master. You actually dare to mention him on equal terms with my grandfather. Ziyan, you must have gone soft in the head? Luo Jie disdainfully snorted. Her master can't be mentioned on equal terms with your grandfather? Ha ha fool. Ziyan pointed at these two idiots and snarled. Her master is Grandmaster Rongyun. Chapter 852, Convergence of Experts 3. Grandmaster Rongyun, who is world famous, known to everybody and known by everyone. Are you saying Grandmaster Rongyun can't be mentioned on equal terms as your grandfather? Ha ha ha, later, I'll spread these words out. See how you, the Luo family, will face all the people under the heavens. These words of Ziyan's were said resoundingly and powerfully. It had so much substance that immediately, the Luo family's siblings were intimidated to a stop. While Luo Jie was still confused, Luo Haochen had already put out a response. He. Really too laughable. Su Luo could be Grandmaster Rongyun's disciple? Then I would be Purgatory City's master's personal disciple. Who doesn't know how to talk big? Having heard what was said, Ziyan almost sneered. You're the Honorable City's master's disciple? Ha ha ha, I am the one that's the Honorable City's master's disciple. Look at this, it's another braggart. First, puffed up Su Luo. Then once done boast yourself up? Having heard that, Luo Die covered her belly and burst into loud laughter. Luo Haochen was even more direct. So many words of nonsense. He hated the little divine dragon the most, and stepped forward to forcibly take away those treasures on the little divine dragon's body. The little divine dragon was so angry that he kept shouting, Aowu, Aowu. But it was of no avail as his body had been frozen, suspended in the air, unable to move. As a result, the little divine dragon could only use a wrathful gaze that was shooting flames, to stare fixedly at Luo Die and Luo Haochen. Watching them take away the treasures on his body, the little divine dragon's number one interest was to hunt for treasures. Now his treasures had been seized. He was so angry that he cried loudly like a baby. Luo Haochen and Luo Die were joyfully satisfied as they took the treasures into their hands. Momentarily, they went wild with joy. Triangle prism, able to break through a robber's ability to hide themselves. Boundless spirit bow, long-distance attacks of unparalleled power. Dropping cloth grass, an essential herb for advancing to the elite apothecary stage. There was still a spirit pinball. Oh heavens! Oh heavens! Oh heavens! How could there be so many treasures? If they bring these back, it would cause a disturbance in the world. This won't do, they must kill Su Luo and Ziyan to silence them. Otherwise, this matter would bring more trouble. Luo Haochen's facial muscles trembled slightly due to excess excitement. These things were indeed all treasures. Fortunately, Grandpa was here to provide support. Otherwise, they might not be able to bring these back. There was also this mountain peak. Luo Haochen's eyes narrowed slightly. He was convinced that this mountain peak still had many more treasures. Just now, when he was forced to death's door by the Diamond Ape King, he was able to randomly pick up a spirit pinball from beneath his body. A 10th ranked spirit pinball. Su Luo saw the little divine dragon get so angry that his fists were clenched, his pair of clear eyes shooting off a scarlet color. She couldn't help but feel her own anger rise fully. The Luo family is truly a nest of robbers, actually plundering so openly and without fear. Su Luo's forehead was covered in cold sweat. A cold light flashed across Su Luo's eyes. For a nobleman to take revenge, 10 years was not too late. Daring to steal her things, then the Luo family would have to bear with enlightenment from her revenge. At present, she had not used nothingness of space to wrap around herself. Luo Haochen and Luo Die had less experience, thus with less knowledge, so it's fine. But with Elder Luo's several centuries worth of cultivation and seeing the world, how could he not tell what nothingness of space was? In order to help her conceal her space element, beautiful teacher had spent a lot of mental and physical effort. If she used it for this matter, maybe it would all be exposed. Su Luo's words carried a strong mockery, disdain and derision. Ordinarily, with Elder Luo's status as a very notable predecessor, he ought to pass on such outside objects and disregard the affairs of life. Even more, he should not take part in the younger generation's arguments, so as to avoid losing the dignity of his identity. But this Elder Luo was unusually narrow-minded and extremely prejudiced, who liked to shield his own family. Humph! Elder Luo snorted heavily. On the hilltop, his sleeve moved with the wind, and the pressure on Su Luo's body suddenly was once again heavier than before. Chapter 853. Convergence of Experts 4. So heavy. In a mere split second, Su Luo felt like her whole body was being roasted by a fire. The pressure on her whole body was so heavy that her legs bent. The bones in her whole body made cracking sounds. It was as if in the next moment, her entire body would burst open. Could it be that she would have to admit defeat just like this? Su Luo's whole body was covered in sweat mixed with blood. She gritted her teeth to bear the pain. She clenched her fist tightly. Her heart was extremely unwilling. Just right at this crucial moment, a rumbling noise suddenly came from the sky. The sound shook so much that fear grew in people's hearts. And what was this going to be about? For a moment, everybody's gaze looked towards that horizon that was exploding with sounds all of a sudden. A navy blue brocade gown suddenly appeared in the sky. Su Luo, with just one glance, was certain. It was an extremely handsome middle-aged man. Merely looking at his appearance, Su Luo kept having a feeling that he was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen him before from somewhere. One could only see him flying fast, hanging in mid-air. He leisurely and contentedly cast a glance at Luo Shengtian, jeering at him repeatedly. "Oh, old fart, is this you lecturing your family's younger generation?" Before Luo Shengtian could reply, Ziyan rushed first to shout out. "Elder Beichen, Su Luo isn't from the Luo family." Originally, rushing to speak before an elder like this was very rude, but the matter was urgent, carrying more weight, so she didn't pay much attention to it. Having heard what was said, Elder Beichen's mocking sneer had an even stronger flavor. "Oh, whose family does this lively girl belong to?" Ziyan hurriedly pointed at Su Luo and said, "She is Grandmaster Rongyan's newly accepted young disciple. Don't know why Elder Luo couldn't stand the sight of her, and just—" Ziyan knew that the Beichen family usually did not get along with the Luo family. These words of hers were something Elder Beichen really liked to hear. Just as expected, Elder Beichen immediately pointed disdainfully at Elder Luo and burst out in loud laughter. "You old fart, those brats in your family are still so disorderly, and you still have the time to discipline Rongyan's disciple on his behalf? It's truly called nothing to do but eat salty radish while being worried needlessly." One could only see this Elder Beichen merely playing it down as he waved his hand. The strong pressure that had been added onto Su Luo's body suddenly disappeared. Elder Luo's complexion flushed red within a short time. "Get lost!" Elder Luo rebuked angrily. Truly, just seeing this person vexed him. "Tisk tsk tsk. Just like this. And you would fly into a rage out of humiliation? I say, your several hundred years of self-restraint, have you thrown it all to the dogs?" Elder Beichen revolved around Elder Luo. Elder Luo was itching to throw a slap across. "Shut up. If you don't talk, no one will think you're mute." Watching them creating a disturbance while quarreling together, Su Luo felt it was very mystical. Able to quarrel with Elder Luo, one must be in a similar realm of cultivation. Therefore, Su Luo was certain that person who saved her was definitely Beichen Ying's grandfather. It's just that, these two people, who could just stomp their feet and destroy an area of super strong experts, were unexpectedly like children, quarreling together like this? Su Luo rubbed her eyes and thought that this was extremely mystical. Ziyan saw that Su Luo was all right, and only then did she release a breath. She leaned close to Su Luo's side and muttered in a low voice. "These two elders have been old enemies from when they were young. I heard they've been fighting for several hundred years. Until now, they still haven't distinguished the outcome of their battle. Therefore, every time they meet, if it's not a quarrel, then it's a fight. It's very lively." Hearing what was said, Su Luo nodded secretly in her heart. However, although Elder Beichen sometimes handles things somewhat recklessly, but his conduct is honest and upright. He absolutely would not do things like robbing the younger generation. Ziyan's eyes were glancing about randomly as her voice rose slightly. Su Luo's water caltrip-shaped lips pursed into a shallow smile. This girl really spared no effort on her behalf. Was this considered tattletaling on something shady? However, this friend she made could consider to be worth it. Having a complete mutual understanding with Ziyan, Su Luo also raised her voice slightly. Chapter 854. Convergence of Experts 5. Who knew? The Luo family. Isn't it just wielding their strength to rob openly and without fear? These super strong experts. Humph. Don't assume just because Elder Beichen was several hundred years old, that his hearing was something that the younger generation absolutely could be compared to. What? Luo Xingtian, you old fart. You actually rob things from the younger generation? Do you still want your pride or not? Having found a point of attack with great difficulty, Elder Beichen almost pointed at Elder Luo's nose to curse him. Elder Luo's face was so submerged in darkness that water nearly dripped out. Panting with rage, he scoffed coldly and turned his back. However, just because Elder Luo remained silent, didn't mean that Elder Bachin had no plans to let him off just like this. You old fart. You really are this shameless, to do this sort of thing? I say, how can you be this shameless? How could you go so low? How can you bring shame upon people of our stature? Ha! I say, you Elder Bachin, with an angered appearance, chased after Elder Luo and while jumping, pointed at his nose, chewing him out. Bachin Lin, I've tolerated you for a very long time. Elder Luo was also not a paper tiger and furiously shouted loudly. His pair of eyes was staring at Elder Bachin, containing a raging inferno. No matter who got pointed at in the nose and was cursed out like this, all of them would not be happy. Frankly speaking, Elder Bachin's temper and Bachin Ying's were very similar. Both people would similarly flaunt, being shrewd after getting an advantage. Hearing what was said, Elder Bachin immediately rolled up his sleeves. Come, who's scared of who? Who doesn't dare to fight is a puppy. At such an old age, even when their grandson could birth a great-grandson, yet they were still so childish. Elder Luo was at the end of his patience. Very fiercely he glared at Elder Bachin. Panting with rage, he threw his sleeve and turned his back. To stand abreast with this sort of person was truly pulling down his standing. However, Elder Bachin's sleeve had already been rolled up very high. He jabbed at Elder Luo's chest. Come on, let's fight. Oh! Elder Luo was itching to slap him, but at present the timing was off. He was still a person who was very concerned with the general appearance of a situation. Su Luo and Zi Yin were simply struck dumb by this strange scene before their eyes. Su Luo felt that her concept of the world had been completely written anew. Henceforth, another door had been opened for her. So as it turned out among super-strong experts, they were not all like her beautiful teacher, who transcended external affairs, living a simple life without strife. There were also some like Elder Bachin who would act shamelessly, like Elder Luo who was narrow-minded that covered up their own greed. Under the blank stares of the younger generations, Elder Bachin still circled around Elder Luo. Unfortunately, the latter was really fed up with him, his complexion extremely unsightly. Come on, let's fight. Whoever doesn't dare to take up this challenge, then that person is the other's damned grandson. Elder Bachin's desire to fight was very strong. Just at this moment, slowly, a cool breeze came through the sky. The horizon was originally a deep blue, almost the color of coastal waters. The deep blue sky seemed as thin as paper. A person easily ripped out a corner of the sky. Just who was this expert? To actually be this powerful? For a moment, everyone raised their heads to look towards the sky. A beautiful man in a Chinese-style gown that was the same color as the sky appeared in midair. One could see that his face was incomparably handsome. His entire person was like a completely pure white jade, faintly discernible like mist. He calmly and serenely stood in midair for a long time. He stood with his hands at his back, and an expression so tranquil that it could not be more tranquil. He was so indifferent, as could not be any more indifferent. Having seen the person that arrived, Su Luo's eyes instantly lit up. Master! Su Luo took a step forward, with a smile in her eyes. Before, she still guessed at this. Following the appearance of each and every one of these important people on the scene, presumably, her beautiful teacher would also come over. Just as expected, beautiful teacher really appeared. Chapter 855. An opportunity in an unstable situation. 1. Grandmaster Rong Yin took a glance at Su Luo and nodded his head faintly. However, this shout of Su Luo's shocked all of the Luo family members present. Even Elder Luo swept a glance at Su Luo. Not to mention Luo Haochen and Luo Die. Luo Haochen was considerably calm. Luo Die simply opened her eyes wide, staring unwaveringly at Su Luo. It was actually real. This provocative, annoying and loathsome girl was really that Su Luo who had such good luck as to defy nature to snatch away older sister Yao Yao's position. Grandmaster Rong Yun leisurely descended step by step from the sky, walking down slowly. Elder Bachin's originally mischievous and feisty temperament was restrained somewhat after seeing Grandmaster Rong Yun. Grandmaster Rong Yun, long time no see. I trust you have been well since we last met. In accordance with Elder Bachin's temperament, he would most likely have gone up and put his arms around the person's shoulders. However, faced with Grandmaster Rong Yun, who was tranquil and calm as a god, he smiled firmly, clearly being very respectful. Compared to the attitude he had towards Elder Luo from before, it was simply as different as night and day. Seeing this, Elder Luo snorted at the tip of his nose and resentfully swept a glance at Elder Beichen. Grandmaster Rong Yun nodded his head towards Elder Beichen. Then he walked to in front of Su Luo and frowned slightly. "Did you complete your assignment?" Such a good opportunity to tattletale on their shady behavior. How could Su Luo let it go? One could only see Su Luo nod her head. And then again, weakly shook her head. "What's wrong?" Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes narrowed slightly. "Master, this disciple indeed found the red acacia seeds, but..." Su Luo's eyes carried a lot of grief from being wronged. She mumbled as if hiding something, and said, "But Luo family. You fought with Luo family's younger generation and lost?" Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes burst forth, emitting specks of cold light. The pupils of his eyes were gloomy. They were deep and filled with profound mystery. The fight wasn't with them, it was Elder Luo. Su Luo, feeling aggrieved, said, "This disciple can defeat Luo family's younger generation. But after I defeated the younger ones, the older one then..." Su Luo's humming and hawing, hesitating appearance, the result was increased by tenfold, when compared to saying it directly. When it comes to shielding one's errors and people, how could Grandmaster Rong Yun possibly lose to others? His pair of quiet and waveless eyes apathetically shot towards Luo Xingtian, even though he did not say a word. But that pair of serene eyes carried a stern, cold and sharp light. It fiercely and ruthlessly alarmed people, and made their hearts tremble in fear. Luo Xingtian's heart truly felt that it was suffocating. What was wrong with him as an elder, taking on the task of lecturing the younger generation? What was the matter with Rong Yun, having a wanting to eat him appearance? "Luo Xingtian, my young disciple is stubborn and mischievous, may have many areas that offends. To have troubled you to discipline her." The corner of Grandmaster Rong Yun's mouth hooked into an arc. Even though Rong Yun's words were polite, but when Luo Xingtian heard it in his ears, it actually shook his state of mind. He gave a hollow laugh. "I didn't waste a lot of thought, just a slight effort of lifting my hand." Indeed, in his heart, he had a guilty conscience. Rong Yun's eyes narrowed slightly with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Don't know to how high a level you have cultivated to, and to have these idle feelings, carefreely disciplining my disciple in my place. Since it's like this, let's fight." Grandmaster Rong Yun's words, clear and mild, were rather like a burst of wind moving swiftly by. However, every word was branded deeply into Elder Luo's mind. Elder Luo shielded his own, but Grandmaster Rong Yun was even more protective. Moreover, Grandmaster Rong Yun had the qualifications to shield his own. Elder Luo's complexion swelled completely red in a split second. Panting with rage, he glared at Grandmaster Rong Yun. Wasn't it just taking his place to discipline his disciple? Why be so fierce? PFFTTT Elder Beichen, absolutely unrestrained, started to laugh heartily. Elder Luo's complexion became even more ugly. Elder Beichen laughed heartily as he pointed at Elder Luo. I say you, if you want to bully someone, you should pick a pushover to pinch. Bullying whoever isn't good enough, but you actually bullied Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple. You must be tired of living." Chapter 856. An opportunity in an unstable situation too. Shut up. Elder Luo glared very fiercely at Elder Beichen. "Even if I shut up, it's useless. Him being a master is now investigating what you were responsible for. How do you see it?" Elder Beichen was berated but was still smiling happily. This elder's temperament was the same as Beichen Ying's, a happy-go-lucky kind of person. Elder Luo looked towards Rong Yun and saw his apathetic gaze filled with a menacing, murderous aura. His heart trembled with fear. Then he lifted his eyes to signal to Luo Haochen. Luo Haochen saw his own grandfather being taunted, and a gush of fury appeared in his heart, his expression becoming severely cold. But his grandfather's order he dared not disobey, so he unwillingly threw those several treasures towards Su Luo. It seemed to him that Su Luo would definitely reach out her hand to catch them. But Su Luo did not cooperate with him. She was pretending to talk with Ziyan. Consequently, one could only hear the 3 bang sounds, and everything fell to the ground. "Oh my treasures," Su Luo cried out in surprise, raised her eyes and glared at Luo Haochen. "Luo Haochen, what do you mean by this?" Luo Haochen had a very annoyed expression. "Already returned your things and still so troublesome. In the end, do you want it or not?" Now, if she wanted him to go pick it up and then return it to her, this was absolutely impossible. Therefore, Luo Haochen cast cold, sidelong glances at Su Luo and turned his body away. Rong Yun's eyes narrowed dangerously, but one also didn't see how he moved. One could only see his sleeve flip over. And in the next second, Luo Haochen had already been lifted into his hands. It was similar to lifting a chick up. He was hung upside down, carried up by Rong Yun. This unforeseen event immediately shocked everyone. "Rong Yun, what are you doing?" Luo Xingtian had never thought that Rong Yun, with that sort of good disposition, would actually become so hostile so quickly. Rong Yun leisurely cast a glance at him and indifferently said a sentence. "I'm disciplining your disciple and grandson in your place." Didn't even know what Rong Yun did. His disposition could still be considered as good, but Luo Haochen unexpectedly gave blood-curdling screams. Luo Xingtian's complexion tensed and he berated. "Quickly release him." Rong Yun laughed faintly and played it down. "Release him? Then I'll release. There's nothing difficult about this." In passing, he threw Luo Haochen towards Luo Xingtian. Afraid of Rong Yun doing something else, Luo Xingtian caught Luo Haochen steadily in his hands, but he himself had to take 10 steps backwards. Every step left a deep footprint in the ground. Grandmaster Rong Yun's things weren't easy to catch. Only with great difficulty did Luo Xingtian get rid of that enormous powerful pressure in order to stabilize him and Luo Haochen. It was also at this moment that Luo Xingtian suddenly discovered that the gap in strength between himself and Grandmaster Rong Yun was actually so huge. However, Luo Haochen at this moment had an poor health expression, and his body was dispirited. Grandpa, it really hurts. Am I going to die?" Although Rong Yun had just pinched him in passing, but he had actually abolished a whole level of Luo Haochen's cultivation. From the summit of the 7th rank, he had returned to the beginning of 6th rank. This was already more than 1 rank. "Rong Yun, you." Luo Xingtian got so angry that even his beard was sticking up. Hateful, simply too hateful. He actually abolished his precious grandson's cultivation in front him. In front of his face, he had abolished his grandson's cultivation. Luo Xingtian did not only feel regret for his grandson's cultivation, at the same time, this was Rong Yun thrashing his pride. Luo Xingtian was itching to rush up and wage 300 rounds of battle with Rong Yun. But what Grandmaster Rong Yun had displayed just now was only the tip of the iceberg of his strength. Yet it had already scared him unbearably. He was absolutely not Grandmaster Rong Yun's opponent. Rong Yun cast an apathetically sidelong glance at him. Returning politeness for politeness. No need to be thankful. Luo Xingtian was immediately choked off. Chapter 857. An Opportunity in an Unstable Situation 3. Aren't you afraid that I might also cripple your disciples' cultivation? Luo Xingtian was extremely angry but still smiled. However, in fact, his heart was hollow. Rong Yun smiled indifferently. "You can do that, only if you hide the entire Luo family. Otherwise," the words he didn't finish speaking was meaningful. "Otherwise, the entire Luo family would be buried with Su Luo." Curses. Luo Xingtian's complexion was ashen from fury and his fist was tightly clenched. If he could win against Rong Yun, then fine. However, he simply could not do so. Also, he had reasons to believe that Grandmaster Rong Yun would truly do this. His words were not just hot air. Rong Yun's face was cold as he indifferently looked at him. "In the future, just manage your Luo family better. My disciple can only be managed by me." Bullying intolerably. Luo Xingtian clenched his fists tightly. "I will allow you to challenge me once." Rong Yun flung his sleeves with an indifferent expression. Hearing what was said, Luo Xingtian's throat closed. If he could beat Rong Yun, why would he waste so many words? Luo Xingtian, panting with rage, looked away. People that accomplish great things did not bother with trifles, he would bear it. Grandfather! Luo Haochen, who was supported by Luo Die, weakly yelled. Luo Haochen expressed his dissatisfaction. How was it that this time, grandfather was this weak? Unexpectedly, he did not help him take revenge. Could it be that he would simply lose a level of his cultivation like this in vain? Luo Xingtian unhappily sent him a glare. He never thought that Rong Yin would have a complete fallout with him over a loathsome girl. Also, his methods would be this ruthless and absolute. Now Luo Haochen could only swallow this grievance. Otherwise, what else could be done? He couldn't win in a fight, then curse him? You dare to curse, he could continue to cripple your cultivation. What could be done? In truth, Elder Beichen was also astonished by Rong Yun's methods. From his impression, this grandmaster-ranked apothecary was always gentle and indifferent, standing completely aloof of worldly matters. He had not imagined that when he made a move, he would truly kill so decisively. Thinking up till this point, Beichen Lin looked at Su Luo curiously. This little girl was truly not that simple. His own grandson usually did not put any attention to women. However, he would often write back home and always mention this extremely lucky little girl. Beichen Lin was experienced in the ways of the world. How could he not understand his own grandson's thoughts? He looked at Su Luo and rubbed his chin in deep thought. This girl was truly not bad. Don't know if he could snatch her away and raise her as his grandson's wife. At this moment, the situation became a deadlock. There were no benefits to anyone as a result. They could only let Beichen Lin come out to smooth things over. Luo Xingtian, what are you so angry about? Their healthy young miss was almost pressured to the point of having her flesh lacerated. Destroying the cultivation of your grandchild by a level is still considered light. If you had injured my family's little shadow, see how this granddaddy will waste your grandchild. Although Beichen Lin smoothed things over, he was still very partial towards the other side. My grandfather did not know she was Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple. Luo Die had a dissatisfied expression. Ziyan coldly snorted. Bullshit. A while ago, Su Luo had revealed her identity. It was you guys who did not believe her. Who are you blaming? Luo Die choked and very fiercely glared at Ziyan. Would Ziyan die if she didn't oppose her? Would she really die? Beichen Lin patted Luo Xingtian's shoulders. I say, you old fart, you truly did not know that she was Rong Yun's disciple? Luo Xingtian looked away. Luo Haochen and Luo Die might not have believed, however he believed it. Only, Rong Yun would rather receive this girl instead of the Luo family's younger generation. His heart was unsatisfied, thus, he intentionally pressured her. Who could have thought that Rong Yun actually came? Moreover, he would immediately become hostile. This point was completely outside of Luo Xingtian's expectations. Chapter 858. An opportunity in an unstable situation for. Just seeing Luo Xingtian's response made Beichen Lin's heart bright and smooth as a mirror. Then isn't it all set? Who told you to first bully other people's precious disciple? So to say, the one in the wrong was you old fart. Beichen Lin concluded after the coffin had been sealed. Su Luo secretly smiled in her heart. The nature of this elder from Beichen family was straightforward, outspoken and did not bother about trifles. He had the same go-between temperament as Beichen Ing. Not to mention that just now, it was he who had moved to save her. As a result, Su Luo's first impression of Elder Beichen was pretty good. Luo Xingtian was extremely angry, yet he could only look on helplessly. He gave a snort, flung his sleeves and then turned his head away. He gazed towards that glossy, jade-like wall. Now that is more correct. The most important thing is to unseal this jade wall and enter this fierce-looking tomb. Elder Beichen said, with hands clasped behind his back. His gaze was luminous and shiny. We are still short one person. Rong Yun's indifferent gaze swept past. At this moment, the three super-powerful experts had all of their attention focused on that jade wall. The dispute from a moment ago was imperceptibly dispelled. Li Xiaofeng's nose is sharper than a dog. Could it be that this time, he is in seclusion to cultivate and didn't feel it? Elder Beichen rubbed his nose and muttered to himself. Just at this moment, the sky suddenly echoed with a rumbling sound. Su Luo raised her eyes up to look. It was another person's figure slowly descending. Today could be described as an opportunity in an unstable situation. It was the gathering of experts from all directions. Li Xiaofeng, I was just saying it was impossible for your dog-like nose not to sense this fishy smell. And here you have arrived, right? Elder Beichen laughed out loud. Even a crazy old man like you had arrived. How could I not come? Li Xiaofeng nimbly descended and returned mockingly. Amongst these 4 strong experts, Grandmaster Rong Yun was the most senior. The other 3 all seemed to be Grandmaster Rong Yun's subordinates. In front of these famous experts, those few younger generations' existence seemed extremely weak. At this moment, a touch of suspicion flashed through Su Luo's. Li Xiaofeng? His last name was Li and also on equal terms with beautiful teacher. Could this person be that person from the Jade Lakes Li family? Beichen Lin smiled sarcastically. My Beichen Palace is indifferent, but do you also dare to step out of the Jade Lake Palace? Li Xiaofeng returned with a ridiculing sentence. Who told the Beichen Palace not to have any noteworthy treasures in it? Elder Beichen's complexion condensed and snorted twice as he placed his hands behind him. Then your Jade Lakesley family must guard them well. Don't try to steal a chicken only to lose the rice used to lure it. Brother Beichen is overthinking. The Beichen Palace was never taken notice of by others. So many things are not known to you. This is also only natural. Li Xiaofeng's oral ability was very good. Every word was like a pearl. Every sentence was sarcastic, directly forcing Elder Beichen's complexion to condense into frost. Rong Yun indifferently swept him a glance. This matter should not be delayed. Studying the inscriptions is the most important matter. Once those words were said, the other 3 exceptional experts' minds shivered. Soon after, all of their gazes were fixed on that bright and clean, jade-like stone wall. They had surrounded the jade wall and concentrated fully on studying the inscriptions on it. The densely packed inscriptions flashed with divine light. Beichen Lin took the lead and moved, sending out an attack. However, that huge energy immediately rolled on like smoke and started to jolt towards the front. PFFF Luo Haochen, who had been weakened, was jolted until he directly vomited out a mouthful of blood violently. In fact, that huge energy had shot straight towards Luo Die. Only, she unconsciously dropped down to the ground and did not pull Luo Haochen down. As a result, that huge energy, with incomparable accuracy, shot into Luo Haochen's body and injured him severely. Luo Haochen's body was already very weak, and in addition to receiving this attack, his entire body had become so weak to the point of dying. Seeing this, Luo Shengtian immediately took out a cure-all spirit pill and stuffed it into Luo Haochen's mouth. Chapter 859. An opportunity in an unstable situation. 5. Soon after, his heavy eyebrows scrunched up. You crazy old man did it on purpose. Out of all the younger generation present, only Luo Haochen was wounded, the other 3 had all dodged it. Beichen Lin spread out both hands, with innocence written all over his face. Who knew that the rock wall would bounce it back? It's not like you said it beforehand. Luo Shengtian was so enraged that he directly smashed a fist over. He saw that Luo Haochen wasn't mortally wounded, so his complexion looked slightly better now. You guys leave this place at once. Li Xiaofeng's glance skimmed through the younger generation with a remote coldness. Especially when he saw Su Luo, his eyes turned even more conspicuously malicious. Li Xiaofeng, although his name had the Xiao word, that meant smile. But his conduct was extremely treacherous, sinister, and gloomily introverted. Su Luo silently retracted her gaze. With great masters present, the few of them in the younger generation could never pick up any advantages. Especially when Elder Beichen's palm strike that was slapped over had such a strong recoil. If they stayed there any longer, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. Therefore Su Luo and Ziyan exchanged a glance. Both of them nodded their heads and left, hand in hand. Luo Die, harboring a guilty conscience, supported Luo Haochen. Both of them also left together. Su Luo, who turned her body around to walk forward, suddenly felt a murderous presence behind her. It was as if a scorching hot glare was fixed on her back. That glare was strong and aggressive with a murderous intent that was breathtaking. It made her heart feel very uneasy. Su Luo clenched her hands tightly that was at her side, and slowly turned around. Once she turned her eyes around, it met with Li Xiaofeng's malicious and grim pair of eyes. That pair of eyes was distant and heavy, filled with viciousness and venom. Although she turned back around quickly, but Li Xiaofeng's strange pair of eyes made Su Luo feel uneasy. Ziyan noticed Su Luo's difference, and she asked, deeply concerned, "What's wrong?" Like Li Xiaofeng's grade of exceptional expert, Ziyan also had no way to deal with them. Su Luo, not wanting to increase her burden, laughed. "It's nothing, only somewhat curious. Don't know if Master and them can open Xi Ning's grave. Even if they can open it, so what? Not a single elder of Purgatory City is present." Luo Die, supporting Luo Haochen, sneered coldly. Ziyan swiped a despising gaze at her. "Using your own elder brother as a shield in critical moments, you vicious girl. You don't have the qualifications to talk to this Miss Scram." Ziyan was obviously driving a wedge between them. The matter before was all too coincidental. Although Luo Die had dodged it, but Luo Haochen wasn't so lucky and ran into it. And even if the consequences created was the same, you couldn't say that it was because Luo Die gave a push. At this time, Luo Die was both ashamed and angry. She glared at Ziyan very fiercely. Only then did she softly, in a humble voice, apologize to Luo Haochen. "Older brother." Luo Haochen looked at her with ice-cold eyes. You had to say, Ziyan's words possessed a very strong destructive power. Luo Haochen remembered that when they were all chased by the murderous Diamond Ape King before, under such a dangerous, tense situation, he from the start to finish, had protected his younger sister. But Luo Haochen was always good to his younger sister. But this time, to say that he was not a bit disappointed, would be a lie. "Older brother. I really didn't do it on purpose." Luo Die could clearly see the cold meaning in Luo Haochen's eyes. Her heart was somewhat frantic. "You didn't do it on purpose, then that means you did it intentionally." In her previous life, Ziyan probably was Luo Die's nemesis. "Older brother, you must believe me, at that time, I was anxious, and instinctively dodged." Luo Die continued to persist in explaining. "Since it was due to instinct, then it just illustrates it even more that deep in your heart, your brother is merely a shield to you." Ziyan said while grinning. You Luo Die was pushed back sentence after sentence. Moreover, every single sentence Ziyan said was exceptionally sharp, stabbing her words until they drew blood, while naked. Chapter 860, A Glimmer of Hope 1. Am I wrong? Didn't I just dissect out the hidden meanings in your words? Could it be that in your impression, your brother would be this stupid? That he couldn't spot such a clumsy lie? You. Luo Die clenched her fists, face flushed red from anger. Just at this time, Su Luo suddenly pulled Ziyan away, shouting, "Careful!" Su Luo subconsciously dragged Ziyan down to the ground. At the same time, nothingness of space momentarily enveloped them both. An incomparably formidable wave of terrifying power spread from the jade-like wall. For a moment, the whole world exploded with loud crashing sounds that shocked the heavens. Crash! The whole mountain range shook and rocked violently. The heavens rumbled as if there were continuous claps of thunder. Su Luo and the others were currently in the valley. Twice, it was the mountain peak. Now both sides of the mountain peak exploded and burst out, and a countless number of huge rocks fell down from the peak. The momentum was so turbulent, like a surging sea, with huge waves soaring to the sky. Wherever one went, the heaven and earth would change color, with vegetation turning into ashes. Under the scattered rocks, even the great masters at the top were also in danger of dying. Go! Su Luo grabbed Ziyan and, with extreme quickness, dashed forward. Both were enveloped in nothingness of space and were also extremely fast. Therefore, they only received minor injuries. Compared to the two people's calmness, the Luo family siblings were in a much more difficult situation. Luo Haochen's injuries were really the worst kind of timing. The instinct to survive made his speed very fast, but how could it be compared to Su Luo and Ziyan's? The pair of siblings continuously suffered hits from the countless number of boulders. Momentarily, They were simply so weary and couldn't dealt with it anymore. Oh, a huge rock smashed towards Luo Die's back. The Luo family siblings, with one on the left and the other on the right, were supporting each other. However, this rock came too quickly, too urgently, too violently. Luo Die was basically unable to block it. Luo Die couldn't avoid it. Unconsciously, she turned and ran to Luo Haochen's side. She was already used to having her older brother's protection. Bam! That huge piece of rock smashed towards Luo Haochen, burying his lower half in a flash. Ah! A violent cry of pain left Luo Haochen's mouth. The lower half of his body was crushed under the huge rock, causing him so much pain that his entire body felt numb. After his pained cries, he fiercely glared at Luo Die. This was the second time Luo Die. Luo Haochen bit down on his back teeth, stressing each word, so regretful that he almost spit out blood. He was so trusting in giving his other side to Luo Die, but she, time and time again, betrayed him. Older brother, I didn't do it on purpose. Indeed, Luo Die really didn't do it on purpose, it was all subconsciously done. Seeing Luo Haochen's gaze that was about to eat someone, Luo Die felt scared and also horrible. Boo-hoo, older brother. I really didn't do it on purpose. Luo Die, you really are bitterly disappointing. I really regret always saving you along the way. Luo Haochen clenched his teeth, so furious that the veins in his forehead popped out. If it wasn't for Luo Die, then Luo Haochen would never have ended up in such a dangerous situation. Luo Die could only bow her head, not daring to annoy Luo Haochen any further. I order you to get lost. Roll away as far away as you can. Luo Haochen really did not want to see Luo Die's pathetic, being wronged face. Older brother. Luo Die, with weepy eyes that wanted to sob, looked at the extremely furious Luo Haochen. She originally wanted to beg for forgiveness, but seeing those waves of huge rocks surging towards Luo Haochen, she immediately changed what she wanted to say. Older brother, I will find people to save you. You wait here. Luo Die had hardly finished her sentence when her figure ran so far that it vanished. Chapter 861. A Glimmer of Hope. 2. Now Luo Haochen didn't have the strength to protect her. If she stayed, it would be Luo Die protecting Luo Haochen. Luo Die couldn't even protect herself now. How could she handle the burden of protecting Luo Haochen? Go die. Luo Haochen clenched his fists tightly. Now several more huge boulders suddenly smashed towards Luo Haochen. The pitiful Luo Haochen, like this, was pressed underneath those pieces of boulders. Fortunately, there were gaps between the boulders, and didn't completely pin him under. That would have destroyed him. However, because his legs were pinned under the rocks, he absolutely had no way of escaping. He could only take deep breaths, with cold sweat flowing out continuously due to pain. Luo Die hadn't run too far before she realized that she had landed in a huge predicament. Front, back, left and right, except for her alone, there wasn't another human figure. Su Luo and Ziyin had already run far away earlier, such that not even a shadow was visible anymore. Nervous, worried, afraid, anxious for a moment, they all rushed into her mind. No, she didn't want to die. She was so beautiful, so lovely, so young. She still hadn't lived enough of the beautiful life. How could she be willing to die? What to do? What to do? Luo Die was so anxious that she ran around in circles. Crash! A torrent of huge rocks and mud rushed down from the two peaks, swirling up like a smoke signal for danger. A countless number of magical beasts rushed out in large groups. Bang! A group of 6th-ranked flaming rhinoceroses approached her from the distance, sprinting until they arrived. Wherever they went, yellow sand would swirl up. The neat sound of the flaming rhinoceroses' footsteps seemed as if the whole world had fallen. Seeing this herd of violently charging flaming rhinoceroses approaching nearer from a distance, Luo Die's face suddenly changed dramatically. Because of the mud and rock slide, the valley was already very narrow. She simply could not avoid them. What to do? Luo Die was entirely out of ideas. Her only way out was to use all her strength to run forward. Run faster than the flaming rhinoceroses. Only like this could she avoid losing her life under the hooves of those monstrous flaming rhinoceroses. Run, run, run. Luo Jie was in such a hurry that she didn't even have time to wipe away her sweat. She exerted all of her strength, and she could indeed maintain a certain distance between herself and the flaming rhinoceroses. However, she didn't have any more spirit restoration pills on her. On top of that, people only had 2 legs. How could one outrun the flaming rhinoceroses running on all 4s? So, in the end, Luo Jie was eventually overtaken. The large herd of flaming rhinoceroses exploded past, giving off boisterous rumbling sounds of iron hooves hitting the ground. Luo Jie was jostled around in the herd of flaming rhinoceroses, and was dizzy from all the collisions. Luo Jie clenched her fists and forced herself not to fall down, because in this situation, the only outcome of falling down on the ground was to be trampled to death by iron hooves. However, Luo Jie could only pay attention to her legs, but could not take care of her upper part. Each and every one of the flaming rhinoceroses was fleeing with all their strength. Unfortunately, a human insisted on staggering along here, blocking their line of sight. Therefore, several flaming rhinoceroses, who couldn't put up with it any longer, heavily pierced Luo Jie with their horns. No save me being pierced and raised high, Luo Jie was scared until her face turned pale. She started to screech in a loud voice. The flaming rhinoceroses originally wanted to toss her far away, but the nervous Luo Jie strained herself to turn, and tightly held onto the flaming rhinoceros's nose. Awoo! The flaming rhinoceros was enraged half to death. It took a deep breath, then followed directly by blowing a mouthful of flames towards Luo Jie's body. The raging blaze immediately ignited the clothes on Luo Jie's body. Luo Jie's hand released, and she suddenly fell down towards the ground. For a moment, a countless number of flaming rhinoceroses were prepared to trample over her body to pass with rumbling sounds. But in this situation between life and death, Luo Jie's mind suddenly flashed with a bright idea. Chapter 862. A Glimmer of Hope 3. The vine in her sleeve suddenly grew longer and launched towards one of the flaming rhinoceroses. Then it immediately pulled. At the last second before Luo Jie was about to be trampled on, the green vine suddenly tightened. In the next glance, she had already climbed on the flaming rhinoceros's back. The heavens do not want me to die. Luo Jie was excited as she looked up to the sky and laughed heartily. Yet, when she was laughing, an enormous rock flew right towards her head. Before Luo Jie could finish laughing, her body swayed around, and just like Luo Haochen, she was pinned under huge boulders. But this time, there were numerous flaming rhinoceroses that accompanied her. Speaking of Su Luo and Ziyan, their speed could be described as lightning fast, comparable to the deities. Very quickly, they escaped the area of collapsing mountains and landslides. Phew, I'm tired to death. They stopped at a safe place. Ziyan leaned on a rock and breathed deeply. She turned her head to look back. Clearly, her expression had improved. Luo Haochen and Luo Jie, those 2 disgusting people, couldn't have been buried by the rocks, right? Su Luo laughed. If these 2 siblings trusted each other and collaborated, then there is a possibility they could have ran out. Otherwise, it would be hard to say. As Ziyan pointed to the sky and shouted, "Quickly look!" Su Luo lifted her eyes to look. At this moment, a black cloud hid the sky and covered the earth, covering their heads. But where the mountains collapsed, a divine light suddenly rushed into the sky. Xi Ning. No way. Ziyan's eyes widened in shock, with her eyeballs nearly popping out. Xi Ning. Su Luo asked uncertainly. Ziyan's eyes were unblinkingly fixed on the horizon, but she said it to Su Luo. Look, it's definitely Xi Ning. He didn't die after all. Xi Ning didn't die? How could that have happened? Legend has it that Xi Ning was one of the guardians of the secluded necropolis of the gods. Catching him would be so much more useful than a map. Any top experts would never give up this opportunity. As expected, swish swish, several silhouettes, with lightning speed, chased towards Xi Ning. In a flash, they disappeared into the horizon, only leaving behind several afterimages. Su Luo suddenly had a bright idea. Right now, all of the top experts have left. Doesn't that mean there is nobody guarding that cliff? When Su Luo murmured this out, Ziyan was also dumbfounded. She immediately slapped her thigh in excitement. That's right. The several strong experts have all chased after Ci Ning. Isn't the cliff left for us to hunt for treasures? Heavens! Moreover, after the several strong experts had left, the cliff was also no longer dangerous. Opportunity knocks but once. Without waiting for Su Luo's instructions, the little divine dragon turned around and ran towards the cliff. Just a moment ago, he had found many treasures in there. In fact, there were still more, only that he couldn't carry them. Let's go, we'll immediately walk the same way back. Su Luo grabbed Ziyan and ran back using the path they came from. Su Luo and Ziyan understood each other really well, with excellent cooperation. In the wake of the seal being opened, the earthquake had almost calmed down, aside from several still collapsing mountain peaks. Hey, never thought it could happen like this time, we're going to be rich. Ziyan rubbed her hands together very excitedly. However, when the two were running back, they were still shocked by the view in front of them. What was originally a quiet canyon was now raised to the ground in front of their eyes. Countless broken rocks, numerous corpses of magical beasts lying on the ground, rivers of blood. Let's go. Ziyan pulled at Su Luo. Su Luo nodded her head and followed after her. The road that leads to success was always built upon piles of bones from the dead. These are all normal. Ziyan was afraid that Su Luo would have a psychological shadow that remained, so she carefully explained it to her. Chapter 863. A glimmer of hope for arriving at their destination. Sure enough, the figures of the four strong experts were nowhere to be seen. The entire ground was a complete mess, shattered into small pieces. Now the cliff had already been opened. It was pitch black inside, like in a horror movie. Su Luo and Ziyan stood at the entrance to the cave with grave expressions. Because if they went in directly, maybe there would be danger. However, the little divine dragon's speed was very fast. With a swoosh sound, the little divine dragon became a ray of light, dashing straight in. Afraid of what might happen to the little divine dragon, consequently, Su Luo and Ziyan looked at each other. Afterwards, they both followed into the cave. After entering the rock wall, it was pitch black as ink. In it was a tunnel so dark that they couldn't see their own hands. They kept on walking, unaware of how long they had walked. Who could have known that there was a completely different world behind this rock wall? All of a sudden, the little divine dragon stopped in his tracks and sniffed around using his sensitive nose. Is there danger? Su Luo halted her footsteps, slanting her head to ask the little divine dragon who was standing on her shoulder. The little divine dragon scratched his head, nodded, and then shook his head again. Awoo. It was a very strange smell. Weird smell? Su Luo told Ziyan what the little divine dragon had said. Coming to a treasure mountain and returning empty-handed. This is not something that fits my character. I'll definitely keep going. Su Luo, how about you? An unwavering determination flashed through Ziyan's eyes. It's rare for the four great experts to open the door for us. If we don't enter, it would be too great a waste. Su Luo smilingly nodded her head. The road before them was even darker. Even though Su Luo could see in the dark, at this time, she also couldn't see anything. However, this wasn't a difficult problem for Su Luo at all. A fireball lit up at her fingertips, and the situation around them was all visible. This was a dark corridor where no end could be seen. This corridor was even narrower than the one before. This corridor was long and narrow, only barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Moreover, the air was also increasingly thinner here as well. The two of them cautiously and guardedly walked in this corridor for ages. They had nearly reached the halfway point in the middle of the mountain. We're here. The end of this corridor was in front of them. Soon a wide, bright hall opened up before them. The hall was close to 100 square meters, but it went for as far as the eyes could see. Inside was completely empty, with nothing in it. How can it be like this? Ziyan paced around in astonishment. Such a hidden place. Originally, she thought there would at least be some treasures, but who would have known here, except for a few pieces of broken stones piled up? There was nothing else. Su Luo's eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and she rubbed her chin. She silently walked around the hall, While walking, she was also inspecting it. Since the little divine dragon entered without looking back, then this was enough to prove that there were treasures here. Merely, they still hadn't found them yet. Alas, I thought we could pick up what the older generation didn't want. As it turns out, there's nothing here. Ziyan shrugged her shoulders helplessly. This trip turned out to be a waste. As she was speaking, Ziyan dispiritedly sat down on a piece of stone. Su Luo searched around and couldn't find anything, and she also felt somewhat disappointed. They came here with such high hopes, and the result was to return in disappointment. Su Luo looked towards the little divine dragon. At this time, if there really was a treasure, then they'll need to depend on the little divine dragon. Oh. But at this moment, the little divine dragon was spinning around on the ground. To say it more accurately, he was playing chasing his own tail. As a result, he spinned around in circle after another circle. But no matter what, he couldn't catch his own tail. Ziyan sighed deeply. Such a small place, we had searched it all, there's really nothing. Oh. Chapter 864. A Glimmer of Hope 5. Su Luo saw that the little divine dragon was also at wit's end. Her brows knitted. Just wait a minute, I keep feeling then. Right at this moment, the little divine dragon's expression suddenly changed. The little divine dragon suddenly threw himself at Ziyan. Ziyan was immediately overwhelmed somewhat by such favor. This little guy had always been cold and indifferent towards her. At present, it was a rare thing for him to voluntarily enter into her lap. Ziyan's mood immediately became very good. Come over to Big Sister's side. Before she finished speaking, the little divine dragon had brushed past her. His finger was pointing straight at the target. That stone Ziyan was sitting on really doesn't give one face. Ziyan poked at the little divine dragon's head, and also rubbed her own head. However, compared to Ziyan, Su Luo had a much better understanding of the little divine dragon's temperament. Able to make the little divine dragon's pair of eyes shine brightly like that, he had definitely seen a treasure. At this moment, the little divine dragon had just extended his two sharp claws. He was scratching at the stone beneath Ziyan. Immediately, stone fragments swirled in the air, filling the whole sky. Ziyan hurriedly jumped up, because if she hadn't jumped up, the little divine dragon might have also scratched apart her butt. Seeing the little divine dragon so excited, a bright light immediately flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Could it be that the treasure was hidden inside these ordinary stones? Su Luo carefully looked at that stone. All of a sudden, she let out a no sound of surprise. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Oh, just a moment ago, she really was almost fooled. These stones had an outward appearance that made them seem like ordinary stones. However, in fact, these stones had great origins. Ziyan, quickly come and see. Su Luo pulled Ziyan up with one hand and pointed at that stone. What are you doing? What's so good about this stone? I say, is it because your family's little divine dragon has nothing better to do? To unexpectedly run over to shave a stone? Ziyan had an expression full of doubt. She simply didn't know that the little divine dragon had a special treasure hunting ability. Therefore, she was very puzzled by his behavior. Your luck truly isn't bad. The moment you sat down, you sat on a treasure. Su Luo said in annoyance. Ziyan was really. Even the little divine dragon was helping her dig out the treasure. Unexpectedly, she still didn't know. Could this be the legendary of fool's luck? Treasure? Where? Ziyan had an expression full of disbelief. Su Luo's gaze was looking at that stone. It seemed as if Ziyan was choking. She pointed at that stone. You're saying this one? Su Luo nodded her head in a deadly earnest manner. Ziyan, with a p sound, laughed out loud. Too funny, how could a treasure be inside this stone? I really don't believe it. Su Luo was all smiles as she responded. Since you don't believe it, then if a treasure really emerges from inside, then you must gift it to me. Ziyan slapped her chest, vouching for it. Sure, if a treasure really emerges from inside, I won't raise any objections. And immediately, Ziyan saw that curve hooking up in the corner of Su Luo's mouth and those eyes still containing a smile as before. In a split second, she quivered. Not right. Su Luo was as cunning as a little fox, Maybe something would really come from inside. She must not be deceived by Su Luo, this cunning little fox. Consequently, with the words at the tip of her tongue, Ziyan forcibly changed it. If a treasure really emerges from inside, I, without demur, will keep it for myself. Su Luo let out a sound of laughter. You miser, at least you turned around quickly. Otherwise, you certainly wouldn't have a share in this treasure. Do you know what this stone is? What? Wasn't it just a shining white stone? Not much different from those stones in the surrounding mountains. It was basically exactly the same. We have been deceived by the external appearance of this stone. I tell you, in fact, this stone's external appearance only looks like a stone. Chapter 865, A Glimmer of Hope 6. In fact, this is actually a crystal stone source stone. Su Luo shook her head slowly, her expression carrying a trace of astonishment. If it weren't for the zealousness the little divine dragon displayed, before this, I really hadn't taken notice of it. A crystal stone source stone. Ziyan, having heard what was said, was startled. Afterwards, she carefully sized up that stone. I've seen a crystal stone source stone before, but this doesn't look like it. So that's to say, this is an even higher grade sealed source stone. There was a trace of graveness in Su Luo's expression. Reportedly, what's sealed inside isn't a crystal stone, but something else. Ziyan found it hard to believe. She hadn't even heard of something like it before. Therefore, let's take a look, in the end, what would appear from inside of it. Su Luo stooped to crouch down in front of that sealed stone that was over 50 kilograms in weight. Su Luo raised her head, and was all smiles as she looked at Ziyan, waving her palm. This hand of mine is the famous little black hand. Are you certain you want me to break it open? At that time, when a hideous messy thing comes out, you better not blame me. Little black hand 1? Isn't this hand of yours the famous little red hand 2? Ziyan firmly did not believe it. Who did you hear that from? To ask unintentionally versus to ask with intent. A trace of unnaturalness flashed across Ziyan's complexion. She compelled herself to act normal. If your luck was bad, how could you have paid your respects under Grandmaster Rongyun's door? Hearing that, Su Luo thought for a bit, and also felt that this was right. That matter of her becoming a formal disciple was all carried out in public. The twists and turns of the road with many crooks and bends. In the end, she really did manage to pay her respects to him. This matter had been spread extremely wide. It wasn't difficult for Ziyan to also know it. Then all right, I open it, then I'll open it. An excited radiance flashed across Su Luo's eyes. She had never opened a sealed source stone before. Su Luo took out that Yanhua dagger and took the sealed source stone's measure in front of it. Ziyan nervously crouched on the other side and unblinkingly watched the sealed stone, afraid to miss a little bit of news. After Su Luo finished taking its measure to find a position, holding her breath with rapt attention, she raised her hand and brought the blade down. Swish, the dagger directly cut down. A piece of shining white stone fell to the floor. Nothing. Ziyan said in disappointment. Su Luo's expression was still as calm as water. She raised the dagger and sliced down once again. There's still nothing. Ziyan spread out both hands. Su Luo's expression carried an even more bit of graveness. Because in the wake of having sliced off 2 pieces of waste material, it was now already getting closer and closer to the core. Starting from now, every cut had to be done gently and cautiously. There could not be a little bit of a mistake. The dagger then peeled with 3 consecutive cuts. In a blink of an eye, only 1/3 of the original size of that huge, sealed source stone remained. Just at this time, a strong scent came out from inside the source stone. As expected, there is something. Ziyan's eyes suddenly lit up. She urged Su Luo, quickly, quickly, quickly. I can't hurry it up anymore. At this moment, Su Luo's forehead was already covered in a layer of fine beaded sweat. Her pair of eyes was as bright as stars, as she concentrated all her attention on that rock. The final cut. Su Luo took a deep breath, then she opened her eyes again. Her eyes were a sheet of pure cold and quiet. Just at this moment, the dagger in Su Luo's hands cut horizontally across. Slide, a sound rang. The 2 thumbs thick of source stone was evenly sliced across. The cut was tidy, like slicing tofu. A happy expression flashed through Ziyan's eyes. Not waiting for Su Luo to speak, she grabbed and tore open the stone that was cut. I really want to see just what exactly is concealed inside this sealed source stone. The source stone was torn open and a cavity appeared in it. And inside the cavity, a blue, fat and plump living creature was laying there. One could only see its pair of eyes were tightly closed, and its 2 chubby little hands, clenched into fists, were placed on its own chest. 1 little black hand, very bad luck, 2 little red hand, very lucky. Chapter 866. A Glimmer of Hope 7. The round belly was still rising and falling. Obviously, this little thing was still alive. What is this? Ziyan couldn't bear it anymore, and extended her finger to poke at that thing's cheek. Su Luo slanted her head and studied it for a while, eventually shaking her head. Haven't seen it before. Pudgy, round, looked strong and good-natured. It looked a little like a blue elf. How did it get sealed in there? Ziyan felt that this was extremely mystical. This cave was sealed away in the cliff, and this little thing again was sealed inside the source stone. This time, if it wasn't for the little divine dragons acting before thinking, this little thing would have had to spend countless years without being discovered by people. What I'm curious about is how is it still alive until now? Su Luo poked its melon-shaped head, curiously provoking that cute infant-like elf. What I'm curious about is when it will wake up. Ziyan had a very good impression of this little thing. Before her words faded, a little paw suddenly appeared from the side, with a pow sound slapping the little elf's head. That force was really great. Su Luo and Ziyan didn't immediately check, thus allowing the little elf to be slapped like this. Su Luo dumbfoundedly stared at the little divine dragon. Why are you hitting it? That's right. The paw that extended out from the side was indeed the little divine dragon's. Ziyan's heart was extremely pained and hurriedly picked up the elf to hug it to her bosom. She rubbed that round head and did not forget to lecture the little divine dragon. Even though you're strong, you shouldn't wantonly hit people. Some people could die after one of your hits, you know? Little divine dragon opened his big, innocent and limpid eyes, and looked at Ziyan in confusion. It didn't understand. At this moment, the plump arm of the elf in Ziyan's bosom moved a little. Immediately after, that pair of eyes slowly opened. So as it turned out, waking it up by hitting it works. Su Luo realized suddenly, and immediately rubbed the little divine dragon's head. This guy had inherited memory, so he understood a lot of things. The little elf laying in Ziyan's embrace was looking directly at her with its pair of clear monochrome eyes. Ziyan met its eyes. Su Luo was digging through the memories in her brain. Suddenly a light turned on. Could it be an elemental elf? Elemental elf? Ziyan had astonishment written all over her face. It's very possible. Su Luo leaned close and carefully examined it. It is said that an elemental elf can provide its master with an infinite supply of spirit power. For most people, they needed to take spirit restoration pills to replenish their spirit powers. However, an expert in possession of an elemental elf didn't need to take a spirit restoration pill. Their elemental elf could provide a steady stream of spirit force to restore their powers. Isn't this being too blessed? Everyone knew how expensive high-grade spirit restoration pills cost. If in the future, there was no need for the spirit restoration pill to replenish her spirit powers. Ziyan's face suddenly lit up with excitement. Su Luo was also happy for her. She had a limitless supply of spirit restoration pills on her, so an elemental elf was of little use to her. But with regards to Ziyan, who was not apothecary material, it was indeed a rare to come by treasure. The little elemental elf tilted its round head and blinked its pair of huge, clear and monochrome eyes, showing its confusion and helplessness. Oh, then this is great from now on. Ziyan was unable to contain her joy. However, before she could finish speaking, this little elemental elf lowered its head and bit Ziyan's finger firmly, and in a flash, it darted away into the air at full speed. Don't just think that because its little figure was round, that it would be heavy, but it was extremely fast, like light it flashing past them. Chapter 867. A Glimmer of Hope. 8. It never crossed anybody's mind that it would react like this. Su Luo was the first to react. Quickly chase after it. Ziyan broke out of her stupor immediately after, and released her strides to chase out after it. With great difficulty, they had cut out a spirit pet. How could they let it run away just like this? The little divine dragon ran first. Su Luo followed close behind, and then followed by Ziyan. However, when Su Luo ran to the cave entrance, she saw someone holding her little divine dragon up by its tail. And that person was actually Fairy Yen Xia. Ziyan, you go ahead and chase after it first. Su Luo calmly instructed Ziyan. But Ziyan was somewhat hesitant. Fairy Yen Xia is a friend of my master's. She has something to say to me. You being here will not be convenient. Su Luo's face was calm, but whether her heart was also calm, only she would know. Okay then, let's meet up at the foot of the mountain when the time comes. After Ziyan finished her sentence, she dashed in the direction where the little elemental elf fled to. On the empty grounds in front of the cliff wall, Su Luo stood calmly for a long time. The one and only Fairy Yen Xia was standing before her. Today's Fairy Yen Xia wore a blue, wide-sleeved and flowy fairy robe. Along with her creamy skin and fiery red lips, she looked like a blue rose demon. Su Luo was looking at her indifferently. Neither haughtily nor humbly, she said. The dragon race is naturally arrogant, with extremely huge ego. Predecessor might as well let him go first. Are you threatening this fairy? Fairy Yen Xia flicked her wide sleeve in a harsh and imposing manner that could dominate over the world. This junior wouldn't dare. Junior just wouldn't want predecessor to make an enemy on all sides. Su Luo smiled faintly. What you mean is that this fairy already has enough enemies. Fairy Yen Xia's tone was emphatic and menacing. Su Luo's heart was somewhat annoyed, eyebrows knitting slightly. What was up with Fairy Yen Xia this time? They had met once before in the throne room. At that time, Fairy Yen Xia was cold and indifferent towards her. She had completely ignored her, but this time, why did it feel like she was intentionally targeting her? Could it be that Fairy Yen Xia was going through menopause? The corners of Su Luo's mouth curled up slightly. In order not to annoy this person with strong cultivation, but who was an emotionally unstable old woman, Su Luo smiled shallowly. If predecessor has come to look for my master, then it is a bit unfortunate. Master went chasing after Xi Ning. This fairy knows. Fairy Yen Xia looked at Su Luo with a smile that was not quite a smile. She knew? If she knew, then why was she waiting here for? If she wanted, she should chase after him without delay. Su Luo silently cursed in her heart. This time, this fairy came especially to look for you. The corners of Fairy Yen Xia's eyes perked up a little, and the smile on her face widened. Looking for me? Su Luo felt this was getting increasingly weirder. She absolutely had no relationship with this legendary, second most wanted Fairy Yen Xia. Right, exactly, to look for you. Fairy Yen Xia tossed the little divine dragon into her bosom. Fine, go with this fairy. As she was talking, she turned to leave. What could this be regarded as? Su Luo stopped her footsteps. Don't know where predecessor is taking me? Su Luo didn't even refer to herself as junior anymore. Fairy Yen Xia's lips curled into a sneer. Is this you not wanting to go? Fairy Yen Xia's face clouded over, an imperceptibly strong, overbearing force pressing down on her. Before, Elder Luo had somewhat restrained himself, but the Fairy Yen Xia right now had burst out with a berserk pressure without a bit of restraint. Under this overbearing pressure, Su Luo only felt all of her bones echo with cracking sounds, as if her body would explode in the next second. Predecessor. Su Luo clenched her teeth. Subsequently, a mouthful of blood rushed out. The murderous-looking Fairy Yen Xia had no intention of sparing her. Su Luo was extremely puzzled. She had no idea where she had offended this unstable and likes to be angry old woman. Going or not? Fairy Yen Xia stood on top of a huge rock and looked down, casting sideways glances at Su Luo. The sun was setting in the west, the orange-yellow color, and the clouds tinged with sunset hues, dyed the blue of Fairy Yen Xia's clothes. It gave people a strange, cold feeling. Since predecessor generously wanted to invited me, junior dares not disobey? Only, I haven't informed master yet so. Su Luo only felt that her blood was rolling around violently in her throat, so uncomfortable that she spitted out a mouthful of blood. No need for wasting words. Immediately come with me. Not waiting for Su Luo to speak, Fairy Yen Xia, in passing, picked Su Luo up, just like lifting up a little chick. After several rise and falls, Fairy Yen Xia's figure had already disappeared from this mountain range. 2 blooming flowers, each on their own branch. Speaking of Ziyan, who had chased after that elemental elf. Even though in the beginning, the elemental elf's speed was very fast, however, after running for a while, it actually stopped. Ziyan thought that the elemental elf was trying to deceive her, so she carefully followed behind it. However, Ziyan discovered that the little thing in front of her had actually stopped to eat grass. Not only was it eating grass, but it also had its fat butt raised as it buried its head inside. Don't know what it was doing. Ziyan walked up curiously, and picked up its little head to turn it around. Only then did she discover, this little elemental elf was actually eating the soil. The corner of Ziyan's mouth pursed, really? Speechless. So hungry to this degree. Ziyan helplessly looked at it. The wretched-looking little thing licked the mud in its palm. Looking at its pitiful appearance, Ziyan's motherly instinct burst out vigorously. Say, what do you want to eat? This older sister will make it for you. The little elemental elf, having never seen the world, pointed to the ground and the grass. 3 black lines appeared on Ziyan's forehead. The grass is for the cows, sheep and horses to eat. You are the legendary elemental elf, understand? The kind that is very rare. How can you eat grass? This taste is really lacking. Ziyan earnestly instructed. The elemental elf's pair of dark eyes blinked a few times, not really understanding what Ziyan said. Before, when it was sealed inside, it was still an egg. This is the first time it had seen the world after being hatched from the egg. A child not taught by a mother, simply didn't know what it ought to eat. Once she thought of this, Ziyan's motherly instinct gave out an even stronger flavor. Looks like you are a vegetarian. Ziyan held it in a spoiled manner. She stroked its little head. Let's go, older sister will take you to eat some delicious foods. At this time, Ziyan had completely forgotten about Su Luo. Ziyan knew about the matter between Grandmaster Rong Yun and Fairy Yen Xia. So when she saw Fairy Yen Xia take Su Luo away, she thought it was the concern from the older generation for the younger generation. As a result, she completely had no suspicions. Ziyan held the little elemental elf and leisurely strolled around inside the dark forest. With her strength, the surrounding magical beasts were completely of no threat to her. Her most important goal now was to coax the little elemental elf properly, and let it voluntarily recognize her as its master. After strolling around in a loop, Ziyan brought the little elemental elf to sample the unique fruits in the dark forest. After strolling around a circle, they had collected more than a dozen kinds of fruits. Ziyan sat down on the grass, and let the little elemental elf pick the fruit it liked to eat, while she herself took out a small paper crane from her sleeve. In fact, before she had lied to Su Luo. This kind of paper crane, she really didn't have anymore, but her third senior brother had given her a few of them. She had hidden them all on her body. Whoosh whoosh, Ziyan wrote a bunch of words on the paper crane. Finally, she muttered to the paper crane. Paper crane, oh paper crane, third senior brother must have waited for a long time. Quickly go. Then, Ziyan slowly blew a breath of air on the paper crane. Chapter 869. Fairy Yen Xia 1. The paper crane suddenly puffed up, becoming a lively and real white crane. It flapped its wings and flew towards the distant horizon. Right now, Ziyan didn't know that Su Luo had already been kidnapped by someone. The paper crane went against the wind, rapidly flying towards a distant place. In the distant extreme north of the land, on a snowy plateau that was endless white, and which one couldn't see the end of at one glance. In a certain icy and snow cave, Nangong Luyun, who was in closed-door seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. He stretched out his right hand, This pair of hands was like white jade, translucent and smooth like icy snow. His fingers were elongated and refined. The paper crane flapped its wings, flying fast but correctly floating down into his palm. Nangong Liuyun's perfect, water caltrip-shaped lips slowly curled up into a smile. This was Ziyan's letter. Ziyan had been curious all along, just what kind of woman that got him so willing to be obsessed with. She had chased after him to inquire many times, but he was too impatient to say. So he simply set up a plan to get Ziyan to stay by Luo girl's side and protect her. After all, his Luo girl right now was still weak, but Ziyan was already a 7th rank. Ziyan wasn't the person with the best skills, but she had an advantage that no one else could substitute. She was a woman. Nangong Liuyun did not like having a man following by his family's Luo girl's side. Let alone with his understanding of Luo girl, she would definitely like Ziyan's personality. Based on all the above reasons, Ziyan was schemed against by Nangong Liuyun to place her by Su Luo's side. However, the matter of Ziyan going to steal the cup from Jade Lakesley family and chase to be killed was not related to Nangong Liuyun. It was purely coincidental. Unfolding the paper crane, rows of black ink words appeared. Based on Nangong Liuyun's vision, with one sweep he had read it all. But seldom did he get news about his Luo girl. How could he willingly swallow it up in one gulp to waste this opportunity? Nangong Liuyun read the letter word by word, repeatedly reading it through 3 times. Every word was familiarly absorbed into his heart. Only then did he put away the paper crane. With gentle movements and full of satisfaction, he put it in his chest pocket. At this time, his mouth curled up into a satisfied smile, because his Luo girl was safe and sound. But his eyes also had a trace of regret. Without his protection, his Luo girl must struggle along, just like this breaking through, really making his heart hurt. However, on the road to get stronger, who wouldn't have a bumpy road and learn through experience to finally be reborn through fire? Since she was determined to become a strong expert, then this was an unavoidable process, although his heart was distressed and unwilling to let go. But he could only watch her battle through hardship to learn from experience. Now he could only hope that he would exit his closed-door cultivation quickly, to return to her side earlier. From the sky, a scorching thunderous lightning suddenly smashed down. Nangong Liuyun's eyes narrowed, forcibly bearing with this lightning strike that startled the heavens. As everyone knew, the lightning element was the strongest of all the elements in its attack power. But at the same time, to upgrade it was also the hardest among all the elements. Another scorching lightning heavily struck down. Immediately, it was followed by densely packed and numerous ones that bombarded down. Nangong Liuyun's eyes were closed, but his mind was clear. He sat cross-legged, eyes tightly closed with his hands making complex seals, forming a dense defensive network. On the defense network, the lightning mingled with the sparks flying in all directions. It would shake a person to the core from watching this. At this time, he had entered the state of self-cultivation, because he must quickly cultivate to quickly exit, so he could personally accompany Su Luo. Only then would he feel assured. Speaking of Su Luo, she was forcefully lifted by Fairy Yen Xia all the way down the mountain. The speed was incredible fast. The wind from the mountain blew Su Luo's ink-like hair, immediately clearing up Su Luo's mind somewhat. If she was taken away by Fairy Yen Xia like this, then this was simply yelling to the sky without answer and screaming to the earth, being ineffective. Chapter 870. Fairy Yen Xia 2. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, a bright idea flashing through her mind. Ziyan was still on the mountain. As long as she left behind a signal to get her to notify beautiful teacher, then it would be an opportunity. Thinking up till this point, Su Luo's expression matched by pretending to be present. In fact, she had carefully entered her space to make something to leave as a signal. She searched for a long time inside her space, but discovered that the things inside were so few as to be pitiful. However, there was some grass, but if she tossed down some grass with one blow from the wind, it would be blown away. When the time came and it led to the wrong direction, then it would be really bad. Finally, in a corner, Su Luo found a sack of rice that hadn't been opened. This sack of rice was placed inside in preparation for unforeseen circumstances, and now at this critical moment, then everything would depend on it. Taking advantage that Fairy Yanxia had her guard down, Su Luo sneakily grabbed a handful of rice and occasionally would toss down 1 to 2 grains. The path down the mountain was craggy, however. With regards to Fairy Yanxia's kind of expert, it was no problems at all. Waiting until they reached a wide road, Fairy Yanxia's mouth hooked into a sneer. "Oh, you are such a clever girl." Su Luo's heart immediately shivered. Unconsciously, she was about to toss the half a handful of rice remaining into her space. Afterwards, her hand was grabbed as if by iron clamps, unable to move the slightest bit. Fairy Yanxia stretched out her hand to grab Su Luo's right hand. Su Luo's skin was usually thick. Seeing she was about to be discovered, there was no sign of embarrassment on her face. She shallowly smiled and instead, in an inviting manner, said, "Predecessor, are you hungry yet? Should this junior cook for you?" Fairy Yanxia really didn't expect Su Luo's response would be so shameless. Her eyes wrinkled slightly, her cold pupils watching Su Luo attentively. That woman was how noble, virtuous and icily arrogant. Could this girl really be her daughter? Her appearance and character was not a bit similar. Could it be that she was mistaken? Fairy Yanxia pondered while holding her chin and was silent, unspeaking. Suddenly, the corner of Fairy Yanxia's mouth hooked up. How could Xi Ning be so easy to chase? Your master leaving this time, if he wanted to return, it would take more than half a year at the least. So if you wanted your master to come save you, then you better save the effort. Hearing this, Su Luo's heart rightfully shivered. If master didn't come, then it would be really hard for her to escape this old witch's clutches. Only, how could this old witch understand so much so clearly? Moreover, why didn't she chase after them? When Su Luo was just about to ask these questions, Fairy Yanxia suddenly burst out in loud laughter. Su Luo suddenly understood. "You have already known about the secret in that wall from earlier?" Fairy Yanxia also did not conceal it. "Naturally. That was a trap you deliberately set up?" Su Luo's eyes narrowed. If it was really like this, then that proved that this matter was carefully set up by the old witch, and was not a scheme devised on the spot. Even the 4 top experts were fooled by her. It could clearly be seen what degree this person's wisdom had reached. Fairy Yanxia icily arrogantly sneered. "So what?" The more Su Luo asked, the more her heart sank. This old witch took a lot of trouble to divert her master away. Could it all be for Fairy Yanxia to catch her? If it was truly like this, then the matter could be very troublesome. It was not limited to only her. Ziyan could also be implicated. Su Luo's heart was nervous, but her face remained calm as before and indifferently smiled. "Does predecessor not fear that my master would know, and an ill feeling will be born in his heart toward you?" Su Luo was probing for Ziyan's safety, only she made a huge circle. Fairy Yanxia seemed to like other people discussing Grandmaster Rong Yin with her. One could only see her give a light snort. So what if there will be ill feelings? In any case, he had gotten angry at me for so many years. What is the harm in adding a bit more? And what's more, the angrier he gets at me, then the more he will think about me. Even if I cannot become his darling, then I will become the mosquito sucking the blood from his heart. Chapter 871. Fairy Yanxia 3. The corner of Su Luo's mouth pursed slightly. This person's way of thinking was really exotic. If the other side didn't love her, then she'd make him hate her. However, you should feel assured. Your master would never know that it was I who kidnapped you. How smart of a person was Fairy Yanxia. She squinted her eyes, and was able to understand Su Luo's thoughts. Su Luo's thoughts became a little sluggish, a kind of bad premonition floating up. Sure enough, she saw Fairy Yanxia let out a gloomy, frosty smile. You are a smart person naturally. You know that killing a person is the best way to seal their mouth. As expected, Fairy Yanxia wanted to kill her. Loathsome girl, afraid? Fairy Yanxia smiled strangely at Su Luo. Afraid? Who is not afraid of death? You are saying it as if you are not afraid of death. Su Luo sneered. If Fairy Yanxia was not afraid of death, Then she wouldn't have deliberately diverted Master away. Fairy Yanxia nodded her head. You really are an honest girl. However, no matter how honest you are, it's still useless. This fairy must kill you this time no matter what. A furious meaning immediately burst out from Su Luo's eyes. If you kill me, then I have no problem with it. However, let her go. Whatever you want to ask, I'll answer it. Are you threatening me? Fairy Yanxia stared at her coldly. Her gloomy gaze stared at Su Luo frostily. I am just haggling with you over the price. Su Luo coldly snorted. No one can haggle with me. Also, no one can change my mind. Ha 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 ha. Fairy Yanxia suddenly howled with laughter. Wind blew her long, mischievous black hair, which danced freely with the breeze, giving others a crazy and strange feeling. The hands at Su Luo's side were clenched tightly into fists. Hateful. The circumstances where Fairy Yanxia was stronger, her strength was too weak. At every point, she was truly at a disadvantage. Su Luo's heart felt extremely helpless. Her determination to become stronger was getting more and more intense. She is from Purgatory City, and her background is not small. Could it be that you are not afraid of Purgatory City's revenge? She could not use force, so Su Luo took out Ziyan's master of the city, hoping that Fairy Yanxia would hold back a little. However, Fairy Yanxia had already entered a half-state of madness, and only burst out with ha-ha. Another howl of laughter. Predecessor. Su Luo's heart was very worried, so she angrily yelled. You, this loathsome girl is too noisy. Fairy Yanxia sent a disdainful glare at Su Luo. In passing, her hand formed the shape of a knife to chop towards the back of Su Luo's neck. Su Luo, who always used this move to chop down others, her body softened and fell down to the ground. In fact, those words of Su Luo's had threatened Fairy Yanxia. Her strength on this continent was able to let her move unhindered in the whole world. However, that was under the circumstances that the people of the Purgatory City wouldn't come out. In fact, Purgatory City's formidable strength was there for everyone to see. They could send a random person out, and he could run amok on this continent without fear. So, when Fairy Yanxia found out about Ziyan's identity, misgivings were born in her heart. Master. A clear and attractive figure approached from afar, and came closer. In the end, she calmly stood in front of Fairy Yanxia. If Su Luo was still awake, she would discover that this female's figure was very familiar. Carry her back. Fairy Yanxia coldly frowned. At the same time, her suspicious gaze shot towards this person in front of her. It's best if she is the person I'm trying to find, otherwise humph. Fairy Yanxia gave a heavy snort. She flung her sleeves, turned and left abruptly. Seeing Fairy Yanxia's arrogant backview as she left, the mysterious girl's hands at her side clenched into fists. A barely contained fury appeared on her face. Immediately after, she lowered her head to look at Su Luo, who had fallen on the ground. The corner of her mouth hooked into a very fierce, malicious cold intent. Slut. Following which, she sent a kick toward Su Luo. The soul that was polluted with soil left an imprint on Su Luo's dress. Chapter 872, Fairy Yanxia 4. However, at this moment, Su Luo's pair of eyes was tightly closed, without a trace of waking up. If she was awake, she definitely would recognize who the person in front of her eyes was. Didn't know how long had passed. Su Luo faintly started to wake up. She opened her tired eyes and surveyed her surroundings. This was a dim and damp dungeon. Green moss had grown over in the surroundings. It was sticky and satiny to the touch. It would really make a person feel nauseated. A strong, pungent and moldy smell was being emitted from within this stone room. Su Luo slowly sat up. Only at this moment did she discover that her entire body ached. It was as if she had been pinched by someone all over while fast asleep. Su Luo lifted up her sleeves, and actually really saw that there were obvious purplish bruises on her white skin. So she wasn't dreaming, rather, it was reality. Su Luo supported her forehead and slowly tried to remember. The last thing she remembered before she lost consciousness was Fairy Yanxia going crazy. She was even able to recall clearly Fairy Yanxia chopping down with her knife-like hand. Afterwards, she lost consciousness and had no other memories. Could that old witch really be this petty? She would still pinch her while she was unconscious as to maltreat her? Su Luo always felt that this didn't seem likely. While she was doubting this, the sound of graceful footsteps reached her ears. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, and being on guard, she looked towards the place where the sound came from. That was a spiral-shaped staircase. The first thing that appeared was a pair of small white boots made of sheepskin, followed immediately after by a white snow skirt. The sound of glittering, jewel-like jade pendants pressing down on the skirt. Nimble and delicate, such an exquisite figure. Then followed by that face Su Luo was familiar with. Liao? Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. In her heart, she secretly cursed her bad luck. When enemies came face to face, their eyes blazed with hatred. Now she completely understood it. The one who pinched her to vent their anger and caused the purplish bruises was not the old witch. Rather, it was the old witch's disciple. Jade Lake's fairy was dressed all in white. Every step she took gave birth to a lotus with many graceful postures, as she walked toward Su Luo. Finally, she stopped about 3 meters distance in front of Su Luo. In this underground stone room there was a square, black iron cage. Su Luo was trapped inside this cage, and the Jade Lake's fairy was standing outside the cage with a relaxed posture. One wore a luxurious and exquisite skirt, with a high-spirited expression. Her eyes contained a touch of a smile that was pleased with herself. One had on a dress full of footprints, contaminated by green moss, with her hair in disarray. At one glance, one could see that she cut a very sorry figure. Comparing the two sides, it was very clear and obvious. Seeing me, must be really strange, right? Li Yaoyao smilingly looked at Su Luo, who was inside the iron cage. She was smiling so much that both her eyes and brows curved into an arc. At this moment, Li Yaoyao's mood was unprecedentedly great. At last, finally this time, Su Luo became a prisoner under her, while she, Li Yaoyao, was standing high above, controlling her life and death. This kind of feeling was truly pleasurable. Li Yaoyao, how could you be so childish? Su Luo still cared about the purplish bruises on her body. Before she was unconscious, Su Luo was clear that her body did not have such serious external injuries and bruising. Since Fairy Yin Xia chopped her until she fainted, so it would be beneath her dignity to use these little tricks to retaliate against her. Able to secretly use such black methods, besides the petty Li Yaoyao, who else could it be? Su Luo had already woken up earlier, and when she saw the pitch-black footprints on her own skirt, she had understood. Li Yaoyao, from high above, looked down to cast sidelong glances at Su Luo and sneered. Becoming the king after defeating the enemy, now you are a prisoner. What qualifications do you have to rebuke others? Su Luo, you are truly spoiled. Su Luo, not to be outdone, with her smile overflowing, said, "What's so bad about being spoiled? Always better than some people who have no one to spoil them." The two people's words were unclear, but the meaning in it was clear to each other. Hearing what was said, the smile on Li Yaoyao's face could not continue to hang there. Chapter 873, Fairy Yin Xia 5. She gave a cold sneer. Su Luo, with death near at hand, and you are still able to laugh? Do you believe it or not that now, I am completely able to slap you to death? The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a cold sneer. Death is near at hand? How is it that I don't know of it? You can kill me? Ha, indeed a joke as big as the sky. Li Yaoyao arrogantly sneered. Do you know where this place is? Su Luo shook her head. Where is this place? Li Yaoyao cast a sidelong glance at her. Underneath the banyan tree lake. Underneath the banyan tree lake? Hearing this news, Su Luo's heart was indeed gobsmacked. Banyan Tree Lake was located in the eastern Ling's extreme region that bordered the country of western Jin. The waters of the Banyan Tree Lake was extremely fierce, with 9 bends and 18 turns. The water was known as a tomb for anyone who entered. But with regards to Fairy Yin Xia, she had actually built a structure under such danger rapids. Jade Lake's fairy coldly smiled. The spirit energy under the water is isolated. You should not hope that someone will come to save you. Su Luo's thin eyebrows wrinkled slightly. Is it only me here? Are you lonely? However, it doesn't matter anyway. Very soon, you will also be on your way alone. When the time comes and you arrive under the earth, then you won't be lonely anymore." Jade Lake's fairy howled with ha-ha-ha laughter. "What about Ziyan? What did you guys do to her?" Su Luo was not so worried about her own situation, but was very worried about Ziyan. After all, Ziyan was dragged into this because her. "Oh, are you talking about that one from Purgatory City? Be at ease. She had already started on this road before you. On the road to the underworld, you'll have someone to keep you company," Jade Lake's fairy said, playing it down. However, Ziyan's name truly was annoying to some people. Having eaten a loss from Ziyan, Li Yaoyao's eyes flashed with hatred. What? Ziyan was dead? The blue veins on Su Luo's forehead popped out. Her complexion suddenly became malevolent. Her movements were very quick, like lightning. She stretched out her hand, directly clenching Li Yaoyao's throat. Are these words true? If Ziyan had died because of being implicated by her, Su Luo would live the rest of her life in guilt. Li Yaoyao never imagined that Su Luo's speed would be this fast. She, as a 6th rank, was picked up by the neck by 5th-ranked Su Luo and threatened. How could you ask her to swallow down this mouthful of shame? Following her neck being pinched, Li Yaoyao's complexion became flushed. She coldly snorted a few times, and in a hoarse voice said, "You caused Ziyan's death. You are the actual main culprit." Shut up. A touch of madness flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Both hands pinched down with all her strength. The strength in her hand was astonishing. Li Yaoyao suddenly was unable to breathe. She struggled unceasingly. However, Su Luo simply would not give her an opportunity to struggle. A dagger suddenly flew out from her sleeves. With a swoosh sound, it directly inserted into Li Yaoyao's arm. Li Yaoyao cried out in pain. "Su Luo, you are crazy." At this moment, Su Luo's eyes were scarlet red. In its depths was a strong expression of madness. "Speak." Su Luo's pair of eyes was very strict. "Ziyan did not die. Did not die." Li Yaoyao was pinched to the point of being unable to breathe, and said disjointedly. Once she heard these words, the madness in Su Luo's eyes immediately was restrained by a lot. She heavily pinched Li Yaoyao's neck and picked her up, and in a stern voice asked, "In the end, did she die or not?" Cough, cough, cough. She really did not die. Li Yaoyao, who had been pinched by the neck, was lifted up with both feet off the ground. At this moment, she was violently coughing. At this point, areas of her face was purplish red. If Su Luo still wouldn't release her, perhaps in the next moment, she would die. "Release me." Li Yaoyao was almost suffocated to death. Su Luo, in passing, threw Li Yaoyao to the ground, just like tossing a rag doll. Chapter 874. Fairy Yan Xia 6. Formerly such an insufferably arrogant Jade Lake's fairy, but now, had fallen to the floor and coughed repeatedly. Her entire person appeared to cut an exceedingly sorry figure. "From the place I come from, there is a phrase I really want to tell you, and it's known as 'don't do it and you will not die.'" Su Luo stared at the fresh scarlet blood on Li Yaoyao's arm and coldly smiled. "Don't do it and you will not die." If it weren't for Li Yaoyao deceiving Su Luo, saying that Ziyan was dead, then she also wouldn't have made a killing move on Li Yaoyao. Li Yaoyao fiercely glared at Su Luo. However, she found that she was completely unable to retort. "Now are you going to speak?" Su Luo coldly smiled. Li Yaoyao raised her eyes and stared at Su Luo with a hatred-filled pair of eyes. With so much hate that she was fuming with rage between gritted teeth. "What, now you won't say anything?" The corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted into a sneer. "That is to say, you want to try testing my cruelty again." Once Li Yaoyao heard Su Luo's words, her eyes narrowed halfway. Could it be that even if she kept herself far away from the prisoner's cage, that Su Luo could still do something to her? Humph, humph, Su Luo was merely bluffing. Li Yaoyao slowly crawled up. Her taunting gaze looked at Su Luo as if looking at an idiot. "You are now inside an iron cage, and I am outside of the iron cage. What could you possibly do to me? Su Luo, if you have the ability, then bring it on." Just now, it was only because she wasn't careful and walked too close to the edge of the iron cage. So Su Luo, this slut, was able to take advantage of the opportunity. How could she make this kind of mistake a second time? As a result, while Li Yaoyao was speaking, she also retreated back until she reached a distance that she felt was completely safe. Li Yaoyao, it seems like you are really afraid of me. Su Luo looked at her with a mocking smile. Ha ha ha, truly the biggest joke under the heavens. I Li Yaoyao would be afraid you? Li Yaoyao looked to the sky and laughed uproariously. If you are not afraid of me, then why did you walk back so far? Su Luo smiled coldly and cast sidelong glances at her. Also, are you preparing to go back on your words? Even if I go back on my words, what can you do about it? Li Yaoyao gloomily looked at her and sneered. If you have the ability, then come and catch me. Li Yaoyao mocked and smiled. That iron cage was not made from ordinary materials. If Su Luo wanted to come out, it was absolutely impossible. Su Luo cast her a contemptuous glance. Wanting to get out was not a difficult matter. At that time, she was even able to walk out from inside the demon cave stone room, let alone this iron cage. If you must know, Su Luo had a huge trump card. However, to deal with Li Yaoyao, it didn't require some complicated methods. One could only see Su Luo's sleeves flip over. Suddenly a cyan-colored vine suddenly attacked towards Li Yaoyao's face. The vine's speed was very fast. Seeing the cyan-colored vine, Li Yaoyao's mouth had a mocking smile. It was merely a small cyan-colored vine. How could it deal with her? Dream on. Li Yaoyao didn't even bother to dodge and directly stood straight up there. Meanwhile, a cyan-colored vine also flew out from her sleeves, and with rustling sounds, launched to intercept Su Luo's cyan-colored vine. It seemed to her, she could not defeat Su Luo in close quarters combat. However, she was still a 6th rank, and her cultivation in the wood element was definitely no worse than Su Luo's. As a result, a cynical smile flashed through her eyes. She was waiting for Su Luo to eat a defeat. However, very soon, she was unable to smile. Before her cyan-colored vine could fly far, it was ruthlessly smashed head-on by Su Luo's cyan-colored vine. Bang, a loud noise echoed, and Li Yaoyao's cyan-colored vine was smashed into fine powder in a flash. Green-colored plant juice was splattered all over the ground. Even Li Yaoyao's eyes immediately became straight. She stared in disbelief at the aggressive cyan-colored vine that now flew straight at her. She wanted to block it, however, she discovered that it was already too late to block. Worthy of being called variant red acacia tree. Its strength was just that outstanding. Chapter 875. Fairy Yen Xia 7. One could only see that acacia tree's vine, with swish sounds, coil around Li Yaoyao's delicate body, encircling her and wrapping around her slender waist, and immediately after, it pulled. As a result, the immortal-like Jade Lake's fairy was immediately flung away like a kite in the sky. With a swishing sound, she was flung to knock directly onto the iron cage Su Luo was in. Li Yaoyao could be considered to have some brains left. She returned to her senses when she was being dragged and protected her head. Thus, when she knocked against the iron cage, her skull was not smashed into pieces. Su Luo, what the hell are you doing? Li Yaoyao shouted angrily. Having remembered that time in the demon cave, when Su Luo still did not have a plant-type pet, this point, Li Yaoyao was certain of. If she had a plant-type pet at that time, Su Luo wouldn't have been messed with by her until she cut such a sorry figure. However, how long had it been, and she now had such an awesome plant-type pet? This was simply too excessive. Su Luo smiled faintly. Li Yaoyao, you want to deal with me? First, deal with my spirit pet, then we can talk. Not to mention, Su Luo's spirit pets weren't only this variant acacia tree. She still had the little divine dragon, this trump card, that hadn't come out. As a result, when Li Yaoyao had to deal with Su Luo, she was only qualified to be bullied. Su Luo, I will kill you. At this moment, the cyan-colored vine had just hoisted Li Yaoyao up, and used another cyan-colored vine to whip Li Yaoyao's butt. That appearance was extremely comical. Li Yaoyao felt that she was unprecedentedly being humiliated. As a result, she shouted at Su Luo. Want to kill me? Then come. Come kill me. Su Luo was all smiles as she said to Li Yaoyao. These words of hers were copying what Li Yaoyao had said before. Li Yaoyao nearly vomited out a mouthful of blood from being infuriated by Su Luo, and she bellowed. It's only because you are lucky to collect such a good spirit pet. Based on real skills, based on fighting one-on-one, you are simply not my opponent. Li Yaoyao was trying to use psychology. Unfortunately, this method might be useful against others, but with regards to Su Luo, it was completely useless. Su Luo smiled indifferently. Fight one-on-one with you? Li Yaoyao, do you think I'm stupid? I have spirit pets. Why should I set it aside and not use it? Then for me to run over and fight you? You may be an idiot, but don't grab me to become an idiot like you. You. Li Yaoyao was infuriated until she nearly vomited blood. You what you? First, go beat my variant acacia tree and then we can talk. Why are you blindly yelling? Su Luo rolled her eyes in annoyance at Li Yaoyao. Su Luo. Li Yaoyao was about to go mad from rage. However, Su Luo only smiled shallowly. Li Yaoyao, just based on your ability and you dare strut around in front of me. The acacia tree hadn't had an opportunity to show off for a long time. Now, it had a rare chance to help share Master's difficulties and worries. As a result, it performed very proactively, completely without Su Luo having to command it. It had completed all its actions by itself. It swung the cyan-colored vine and dragged Li Yaoyao to swing her in midair. One moment to the east, and another moment to the west, one moment knocking her against the wall, another time knocking her against the iron cage. It played with her without restraint until it was beside itself with joy. Su Luo nearly wiped away some sweat. Su Luo, quickly let me down. Let me down. The originally pure, cold and arrogant Li Yaoyao now was shaking her tail and begging for mercy from Su Luo. Now you are willing to say it? Su Luo had her arms crossed and she unhurriedly shot her a glance. At this moment, Su Luo, who was locked inside the iron cage with stained clothing, was unbridled and confidently at ease, as she steadily gained the upper hand. The exquisite and gorgeously dressed Li Yaoyao was toyed with until she was battered and exhausted, so weary that it was hard for her to cope. It was completely the opposite to the situation from a while ago. Quickly let me down. Let me down quickly. Another bang sound echoed. Li Yaoyao was harshly thrown to the wall. Chapter 876, Fairy Yen Xia 8. It was not as if Li Yaoyao hadn't thought of doing what Su Luo did before, cutting off the cyan-colored vine. However, the problem was that she did not have such a sharp dagger on her body. Also, this cyan-colored vine was sturdy and unbreakable. Immediately following after was another heavy sound that echoed. Li Yaoyao was thrown onto the iron pillar of the iron cage. Such a strong hit, but the iron cage didn't even move a bit. There wasn't even a bit of cave-in at all. What Li Yaoyao just said before was not wrong. Didn't know what kind of material this iron cage was made from. If the person locked inside wanted to cut the iron bar to escape, this matter would be impossible. Su Luo placated the acacia tree. As a result, having successfully accomplished its goal, the acacia tree cheerfully danced around Su Luo in a circle. Only then did it happily return into her space. Su Luo had her arms crossed and arrogantly looked down at Li Yaoyao, who had been tossed onto the floor. If you had said it earlier, wouldn't it be better? Then, you need not have suffered this physical pain. Li Yaoyao's hands were clenched into tight fists by her side. Every blue vein on the back of her hand had popped out. Abominable, hateful. She bit her back teeth and fiercely glared at Su Luo. Su Luo, in the end, what kind of sin did I beget in my previous life, so that I would actually encounter you in this lifetime? Why do you have to vie for things with me every time? If you ask Li Yaoyao who she hated the most in this lifetime, Su Luo was entirely worthy of being ranked first in her heart. Su Luo faintly sighed and looked at her. Li Yaoyao, I think you are mistaken about one thing. Staring at Li Yaoyao's pair of beautiful eyes, Su Luo's complexion became cold. She stretched out her hand to count. First, it was always you who vied for things with me, and not me who contested matters with you. Second, it was always you who provoked me, and not me who provoked you. Third, since you wanted me dead, then why would I not fight for things with you? As a result, before you blame others, first think about what you yourself have done. Su Luo's eyes were cold and tyrannical. The Jade Lake's family had pursued her relentlessly, then struck at her and continuously chased to kill her. If it weren't for her lifeline being long, then she would have already died. How could she have lived till today? A cold light condensed in Li Yaoyao's eyes. I vie for things with you, provoked you and chased to kill you, so what? I am the Jade Lakesley family's princess, and you are only mud on the ground. Just based on you, this kind of mud. Think you are fit to fight over things with me? Su Luo looked at her in contempt. The corner of her mouth raised into a mocking smile. Then what about now? You, this noble princess, aren't you being stepped on under my foot by me? The soft mud, right now. Su Luo extended a feet and sneeringly stepped on Li Yaoyao's abdomen. This posture was extremely arrogant. You stole my third senior brother, stole my master Rong Yun. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you. How could Li Yaoyao endure having her body stepped on by someone? This was simply too shameful and humiliating. She secretly vowed in her heart. Even if she died, she would drag Su Luo down to be buried with her. If they really liked you, and had set their mind on you, how could others have stolen them away? Su Luo used a sympathetic gaze to look at her. Let alone, from the beginning, they never belonged to you. No, it was you who stole them away. It was you that stole them. Li Yaoyao screamed loudly in a crazed manner. That's you believing in your own lies and your own wishful thinking. Su Luo repeatedly cruelly struck at her psychologically. Su Luo was not a saint. If others harmed her, and asked her to be magnanimous and generous, her heart had always not been that big. Whoever dared to provoke her 1/3 of a meter, then she would pay them back 10 times by 3 meters. She and Li Yaoyao were already at the point of no return. Now she had an opportunity. Naturally, she must demand back some of these debt as well. Just when the two of them were in the midst of quarreling ceaselessly, the sound of ice-cold footsteps came from the spiral staircase. Su Luo cast aside Li Yaoyao, her gaze going towards the place where the sound came from. Chapter 877. Fairy Yanxia 9. If she did not guess wrong, then the person coming ought to be brightly colored phoenix with fluttering butterfly design moccasin. Step by step, walked down the stairs. As expected, it was her. This time, Fairy Yanxia did not show up alone. At her side, her personal maid that attended to her also followed. This maid's appearance was delicate and not lacking much when compared to Li Yaoyao. If she was placed in the world outside, this lady's name would spread far and wide. However, she was only a minor maid at Fairy Yanxia's side here. When she saw that this maid was holding something in her hand, Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. It was a small dish made of white jade. The small dish was filled to the brim with a black, ink-like liquid substance. Standing from far away, she was able to smell a strange scent. Su Luo really disliked this kind of smell. Seeing Fairy Yanxia, Li Yaoyao's eyes turned, and suddenly, a calculating plan appeared from her heart. She did not get up and move towards Fairy Yanxia while kneeling. Master, save me, Su Luo nearly beat your disciple to death. Li Yaoyao's eyes wept and sobbed. She cried like raindrops on a pear blossom, so lovely and pitiful. Adding to that the clothes on her body, and also her face that had been knocked purple and swollen unevenly, simply too pitiful. If a guy saw it, he would surely rush up in fury to protect the young beauty. Fairy Yanxia looked indifferently at Li Yaoyao and frowned. What happened? Master, she wanted to kill this disciple. Li Yaoyao's tears fell like a flood, weeping practically beside herself. This kind of her was truly too lovely and pitiful, inciting others' tender affections. You are saying that she wants to kill you? Fairy Yanxia's tone was indifferent as she said, unable to determine her mood. Li Yaoyao thought that she succeeded and immediately. Her acting was full of even more zeal. Master, the injury on this disciple's face was made by hits from her. Li Yaoyao lifted the hand covering the injury on her face, and pointed to it for Fairy Yanxia to see. Sure enough, Fairy Yanxia's complexion gradually sunk down. The injury on your face was made by hits from that girl? Fairy Yanxia asked clearly, word by word. Yes, absolutely true. I ask master to call the shots for this disciple. Li Yaoyao beseeched while weeping. However, she still did not forget to use the corner of her eyes to sweep Su Luo a pleased with herself glance. She wanted Su Luo to know that she did not need any sympathy. Fairy Yanxia treated her very well, better than anyone else. As if only this way, she was able to satisfy her vanity. Just when she was secretly pleased, a clear, crisp slapping sound could be heard. Slap. A heavy palm fiercely slapped onto Li Yaoyao's face, immediately slapping Li Yaoyao stupid. Master? Li Yaoyao covered her red and swollen cheek that was slapped, lifting her eyes in disbelief, staring at Fairy Yanxia. Master not only didn't help call the shots for her, she actually hit her with a slap. Fairy Yanxia's eyes were filled with a sinister cold light. Not only didn't she exercise restraint, instead, she directly kicked towards Li Yaoyao's chest. How great was Fairy Yanxia's strength? This kick of hers, how could Li Yaoyao possibly bear it? One could only hear a violent striking sound echo. It seemed as if Li Yaoyao's entire person was nearly hung from the iron cage. Afterwards, she slid to the floor, following down the bars of the iron cage. Cough, cough, cough. Li Yaoyao covered her chest and continuously coughed violently. Fresh blood flowed down along the corner of her mouth. It seemed really too shocking of a sight. However, Fairy Yanxia's anger was still unresolved. She pointed at Li Yaoyao's head and cursed, roaring in a furious tone. Slut! You are a 6th rank and was no match for her a 5th rank, and you still have the face to complain? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? How could I, Yanxia's disciple, lose to Rongyun's? You idiot moron! Chapter 878. Fairy Yanxia 10. Fairy Yanxia cursed roundly. How could she still have the gracefulness from before? At this moment, inside the iron cage, Su Luo's eyes wrinkled slightly. So, it turned out that Fairy Yanxia was only graceful in front of Master. In truth, inside, her temper was very twisted and malevolent. It was no wonder that Master, no matter what, didn't wish to have much contact with her. This kind of woman was truly too extreme and terrifying. Li Yaoyao could only cry, and continuously weep loudly and bitterly. To think that she, as a princess of the Jade Lakesley family, who had been doted on from head to toe, now actually had to follow by this old witch's side. If she was not beaten, then she was cursed, this kind of daily life. Fairy Yanxia coldly glared at her. Not allowed to cry. Having heard what was said, Su Luo couldn't help but look towards Li Yaoyao. After being berated by Fairy Yanxia, as expected, Li Yaoyao did not dare to cry anymore. She used her palm to cover her mouth and sobbed in a very, very low voice. She looked even more pitiful than a lowly daughter-in-law. Su Luo's heart inevitably had a kind of sympathetic feeling of sorrow. It seemed that this year of Li Yaoyao accompanying by Fairy Yanxia's side, she had suffered a lot. Otherwise, with her haughtiness, she wouldn't have been this obedient. Compared to Li Yaoyao, the harsh homework that Master had assigned her was simply like soaking in a honey pot. Thinking about this, Su Luo rejoiced endlessly. After Fairy Yanxia finished disciplining Li Yaoyao, her attention was quickly placed on Su Luo's body. After all, her coming this time, the main target was Su Luo. Apply this on her for me. Fairy Yanxia's eyes instantly became cold and her gaze was full of icy hatred when looking at Su Luo. Su Luo's heart was suspicious and couldn't help but to wrinkle her brows. Wait a moment, what is that thing? You do not need to know. Fairy Yanxia simply did not give Su Luo a chance to find out. Her wide sleeves swung by. Immediately, Su Luo only felt her entire body weaken, her body becoming numb. She couldn't even lift a single finger. Fairy Yanxia once again waved her hand, and that iron cage without a lock gave a burst of crashing sounds. Immediately, countless black iron bars retracted into the ground. That iron cage seemed to have immediately disappeared in place. That maid, hearing Fairy Yanxia's commands, carried the ink-black liquid in the white jade dish, and walked, step by step, towards Su Luo. Su Luo was able to sense that strong odor that irritated the nerves for her sense of smell. She couldn't help but to frown. Still not quickly going and helping? Fairy Yen Xia grabbed a handful of sweet dates while she prompted Li Yaoyao to personally go administer the drug. After hearing this, the originally grieving and despairing Li Yaoyao immediately became exuberant. She stood up right away, and the pain on her body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Li Yaoyao held back her expression and bowed towards Fairy Yen Xia. Disciple obeys. Afterwards, she turned around to face Su Luo. Su Luo's pair of eyes met hers, and could clearly see that very fierce hatred that flashed past on her face. I protest. Su Luo's heart's unease became more and more clearer. Your protests are invalid. Fairy Yen Xia directly made a verdict. Li Yaoyao looked at Su Luo, the corner of her mouth hooking up into a very malicious smirk. Just for this moment, she had prepared for a very, very long time. The maid carried a tray painted in red. On the tray was a white jade dish and a brush. The type of large brush used to paint walls. A very dark and fierce expression flashed through Li Yaoyao's eyes. Without any hesitation, she picked up that large brush and dipped it into the thick, black-as-ink medicine. Su Luo forced herself to remain calm and showed a smile. She said towards Fairy Yen Xia, "What is actually in this thing? Is it possible for predecessor to tell me a little?" At this moment, a chamberlain had already carried a red sandalwood chair over and placed it behind Fairy Yen Xia. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.